Did you say 2:30 or 6:30? Shall I go? I can't see, I can't write.
Oh, ಇವತ್ತು ಮತ್ತೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾ?
ಹೌದು ಡೈಲಿ
Durgam Cheru.
Nice to see you. And imagine you like this, you know, to be like this. I thought you look different somehow from the voice.
Somebody much older.
No, no, no. I'm old already, so with 4 grandkids. So
You could be young and have 4 grandkids also.
occasion or never.
Can you read it? His latest collection. I only read in Tamil. Tamil books in translation I don't read.
The catalog.
presentation. Is it on? Yeah. Can we settle down? Uh, I think more people will turn up given the Bangalore traffic and so on. So, and I think if this door could also be closed. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to have all of you here again, a galaxy of speakers like we had yesterday, both in the morning session and in the afternoon session. I begin by saying a big thank you on behalf of the Book Review Literary Trust to the Tamil Nadu Textbook Corporation, Dr. Sharavanan and Mini Krishnan, who have made this translation seminar in Bangalore possible. Their dream and vision of taking Tamil to the world has led to all of us getting access to brilliant new translations of classics as well as modern fiction. There was some debate about how to define classics and so on, but I'm sure those who want to ask a question about that today also, others would answer. And that's been happening in this decade. So we are celebrating the wonderful work of Dr. Sharavanan and Mini Krishnan and the glorious legacy of South Indian languages. And this was the title of the seminar. I must say, I was very happy when Uma came up with this. She always has this knack of, either titles or book covers and so on. So, because I'm absolutely clueless about that. So this echoes across tongues. The way the sessions went yesterday, I think all of you who were present would bear me out, that it sort of really flowed from one theme to the other with people interacting and, asking questions or making comments. So I think all of us could learn a lot as well. Before we begin, we would like to release Dr. Imayam's new book, which is just off the press.
Thank you.
So we have others are also here, but two authors whose books have just come out fresh off the press. The second author is Jo Peth Vajiri, who has published an anthology of short stories, greatest stories from the Northeast ever told. Aleph is doing a series, as one of yours as well. And so these greatest short stories, I think they are doing a really good job of putting together the best as far as possible. Chandan Gowda is apparently, well, yes, that's the other thing I wanted to mention for those of you who were not present yesterday. We were really lucky, and thanks to Uma persuading them to chair the two sessions, Chandan Gowda as, okay, yeah, Chandan Gowda and Vannamala Vishwanathan in the afternoon, they did such an absolutely marvelous job of weaving all the ideas together, getting speakers to, answer whatever set of questions that they posed to them and things like that. So I'm sure that is going to happen today also. And again, one more book, one more author. This is Alone in the Night River by M. Sreedhara and Alladi Uma. They always translate together. So now I'll go back to my two-bit, and then we can hear all of you. The two themes today are translating different genres and reviewing different genres. As you can see from the program, Uma Iyengar has put together a really wonderful galaxy of speakers for today as well. I would like to share with you that the book review has, right from inception, given special focus to reviewing books on translation studies and works in the Indian languages, both in the original and in translation. In fact, we can claim without exaggeration that the reviews of original works which we have published in many instances have led and acted as a bridge to translation. Authors and publishers in the Hindi belt, at least, because we operate out of Delhi, the book review is published from Delhi. They have assured me more than once that because a review appeared in the TBR, they were motivated to take it up for translation. So I think that's something we are always looking to see. We'll be carrying reviews of all the new titles that we have displayed today. Right from the start, ever since we carried a review by Mrinal Pandey of a Hindi-Urdu title, Jheeni Jheeni Bini Chadariya by Abdul Bismillah, we have not looked back. Special issues on languages published over the years in Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, and several North Indian languages are collector's items today, even though I say so for ourselves. One, because we were lucky to have as guest editors eminent writers and scholars of the languages. That is very important because they chose the books. We got them from the publishers and then suggested reviewers, the whole process of putting the issue together. So that made it cohesive, brought various genres into that. So we were lucky to have them as guest editors. And two, a large circle of bilingual critics that we are able to tap, very often at very short notice. Forgive me if I seem to be blowing the TBR trumpet, but I think I have it on the best authority that in a collection, in the presence of Vidwans, like all of you here, I think it's permitted that one can blow your trumpet. The book review has published several translations of 19th century classics. This is another project that we are always on. 19th century classics which are in print, and in the case of the play Kanya Sulkam, still being performed in the state, in Andhra. Isn't that so, Sreedhar? Yes. The translation series was titled Present Continuous, and we published Kanya Sulkam, a Telugu play, Bankim's Kapala Kundala, Saraswati Vijayam from Malayalam, and Chokhamela, the Marathi Abhangs on Vithala. The one copy each that we are left with, they are on display here, but hopefully we'll be able to see more of that. The series was the brainchild of Professor Meenakshi Mukherjee, who was on the editorial board of the book review till she passed away very suddenly. We miss her presence sorely. In this landmark year of TBR, it is being proposed to restart the series and maybe have these titles also reprinted because a lot of people are now showing interest again, and publish more translations. I think all your suggestions, if you want to come, email us saying this is waiting to be translated. We'll be very happy to take it up. And that includes musical texts. I've been asking a lot of people yesterday if there are ancient musical texts which are in danger of getting lost to posterity. So please email us and we'll be very happy to see how we can take it forward and have them translated. We have another translation series titled Past Continuous, and the first and only one so far title which we have published is Inner Mirror. This series too will be continued in 2026. The practice of publishing reviews of works in the Indian languages continues and is often sponsored by publishers or book lovers. TBR is putting together a special issue on translations from the Tamil at Minnie's suggestion for the book fest around Pongal. And she gave us a long list of about 62 titles which they have published in the last few years. So that'll be coming out in January. All these special issues are available in the TBR archives, and I think many of you have reviewed for these special issues. So the two themes for this morning's session complement each other. In addition to the different perspectives which have been put out there for the speakers to throw light on, I would like to raise one point each for the two themes and hope that you will have some answers. On translation, my question is, can the translated work claim to be a creative work on its own beyond the original work? This question has gained some face time, particularly since works in the Indian languages are springing to global attention by winning international awards. This point, I think, personally, there is merit in such a claim, but it would be good to take it up for discussion. It came up yesterday also. I think we discussed it very briefly, but many of you might want to comment on this. Yesterday, actually, Nandini Krishnan made a very interesting point about this, when we were discussing it. She said, if the work is good and the translation is good, it goes to the credit of the author. And if it's not good, the blame is on the translator. So she's not here today, otherwise we would have heard more on this theme. The second question is about reviewing, and this was thrown up at the round table we organized in Delhi in August to celebrate TBR at 50. Critical reviews appear after a work is published in newspapers and journals, which is the standard practice. But do you all think, would it be better for a critic and translator to work together along with the author whenever possible to review a work while a work of translation is still in progress? And this was the point that was made, that it would mean so much if the criticisms were to be shared with the translator to improve the whole process. Would it make for a better quality of translation? Would it help to create a more nuanced rendering of the translated work, of the original work? So these were the 2 points I wanted to make. So I won't take up any more of your time, and I hand the mic over to Professor Thomas.
Thank you, Chandraji. Good morning to you all. And for those who were not here yesterday, I would repeat a little story about my relationship with TBR. It began about 25 years ago, me reviewing books by them regularly. Then of late, my books are being reviewed in the TBR. It's, a great privilege that I have. This is the last book which was reviewed by Mala Sri Lal, the 100 Indian Stories. It was a really good review and everyone was appreciating it. It is a kind of exposure that every author would like to have, and I'm very, very glad that it came out in the TBR.
But Thomas, can I also say that when the book came to me for review, and I sat and read your introduction from one to last page, and then we asked Aleph and also your permission. We have carried the entire introduction as
Yeah.
an expert, excerpt in the book review, before the review appeared, that is. So I thought that the introduction should be read by all our readers.
This I missed yesterday. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. So, and the second thing is, it's a matter of great pride that we have Deepa Bhasthi here. And we, all of us in the panelists and the most of us translators, literary translators, it's a matter of pride for us, to have you the star of the day, like here, and we extend to you heartiest congratulations. Thank you. So with that, I'll just begin. You see, among the panelists, I had circulated certain points, which we defined and were generated from the guidelines that I got from the concept note. So I'll just begin right off. Number one is it correct to say that poetry is best translated by poets? Are poetry translation workshops more effective for translating poetry, particularly among closely related languages? How will a translator or translators negotiate culture-specific or linguistically unique expressions, images, metaphors, etc., found in the original? All are those steeped in prose writing whose thought processes move around the linear logic of prose, suited to translate poetry that is rather elliptical, if I may say so? Number two, in poetry translation, rather than one translator giving his or her version, can a collectively produced version through discussion and interaction among the participants bring out the maximum layers and dimensions in the translated version? Can the translated text retain the lyrical exuberance along with the mellifluence of words and expressions in a special language? Should we footnote or gloss the translated version to make the text easier for the receiving readers? This is number four. In our colonial backdrop, it would look like giving a deference to the reader or being beholden to the erstwhile colonial master in a worst-case scenario. I have begun not using footnotes personally, italicization or glossaries. Many translations of Latin American works do not use italicization, notes, or glossaries, and just leave the native word or phrase as they are. Translation of Dalit works implies the translator should have a first-hand experience of the Dalit life. It is often argued and established that only a Dalit can authentically write about Dalit life. When a non-Dalit writes about it, their work is at best a portrayal of vicarious experience, which may be rejected by Dalits. Is this also true for the translation of Dalit works? At one point, it was argued that translating Dalit works into English proved to be a short attempt at self-empowerment, seemingly pitted against Sanskrit or any language of power in the instant cases. What about the status of English among Dalits as the language into which Dalit works are to be translated? If you remember, a few years ago, about 20 years ago, in a North Indian village in UP, it's Banka, there was a temple raised to the goddess of English. Yeah. So whoever imposes you is your god. So this aspect of English in Dalit studies and the existence of the self of the Dalit. So how is this defined? This is for us all to just think about. When translating works which are authored by women and focus on women's experiences, is there a preference for female translators? We were discussing a little while ago in the morning. Yeah. Can men also perform a convincing translation? Just as a man can imagine a female character or write an entire novel featuring women, can a male translator truly understand and convey a woman's feelings and aspirations, and can the reverse be also true? Can a trans person's work be authentically translated by a straight person? Can a same-sex experience be authentically translated by someone with a heterosexual bias? Can any shades of various gender identities expressed in literature, beginning with the third gender, be properly carried over to the language of translation by a person who lacks any first-hand lived experience? Translating academic books requires a faithful and accurate rendering of terminologies and academic jargon, which may need to be adapted into a language that has a considerably limited vocabulary, especially if the source language is English, French, Spanish, or another developed modern language. What could be the ideal way? As a matter of dignity and pride in their languages and cultures, Tamil practitioners have been coining new terminology and jargon for ages. In this era of so-called professional translators, can someone with a non-scientific background translate scientific subjects? Will machine translations from yesteryears, now replaced by AI, be of help in translating academic texts in science, medicine, IT, etc.? Now, about Deepa Bhasthi again. She is an acclaimed children's writer also. So, thinking about children's writing, can a children's book be translated? You know, getting into the translated, the author, the original author has, you know, written something that appeals to children or that enters the children's psyche or world. Can the translator also do the same thing, or such a person should translate? So I was just having you in mind if you can also translate children's work. As a literary translator, I believe that the review of translator work is a very important to me, particularly if the book is my own translation. One curious case involved a novel I translated that won the Crossword Award, which was this is my personal experience, which was then divided equally between the author and the translator. You know, the Crossword Award in those days, it was in 2007. However, the Malayalam papers prominently featured the original author, a celebrated writer in Malayalam, my friend also, as the award winner, while completely omitting any mention of my name in as the translator, which caused me considerable mortification, understandably. Even now, reviews often mention the quality of the translation of the translator only as a secondary consideration. It would seem that the Malayalam book became a swayambhu in the English language, or the language of the translated text. There is another point. Ideally, the reviewer should possess knowledge of both the involved languages. Otherwise, how will he or she know for sure that the translated text is accurate? Is the translated text at least reasonably authentic, if not faithful? There can be other views in this regard. So these are the things, you know, these are the thoughts that have come up to my mind, and I think all of you, the panelists, have given me the outlines of what they're going to speak, and I would invite Professor Bharati Harishankar as the first panelist. Professor Bharati Harishankar is the Vice Chancellor of Avinash Lingam Women's University, Coimbatore. She translates bilingually between Tamil and English. Her recent translations include R. Shanmugasundaram's novel Nagammal, Tamirachi Thangapandiyan's Birthing Herd and Other Stories, and the biography of Movalur Ramamridam Ammayar. As a nominated member of the Australian Institute of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies, Australia, she has translated and published poetry of Australian Aboriginals, Native Canadians and Maoris of New Zealand. Along with Mini Krishnan, she had edited 3 textcom workbooks on teaching translation, which have been prescribed as course books in different universities. Professor Bharati Harishankar.
Many thanks for inviting me here, and also thanks for your patience and understanding. I mean, in a seminar that happens for 1.5 days, I've been absent for 1 whole day, so sorry about that, and thanks for your understanding. I thought before I move on to make some sense of the talking points that I shared, I thought I could also quickly respond to some of the concerns that Professor Thomas raised. Okay. So when we say, is poetry best translated by poets? I'm not going to answer that question for you. However, I want to raise a related question. as a bilingual translator, somehow my preferred genre when I translate from English to Tamil is poetry. When I translate from Tamil to English, it is prose and fiction. How do we make sense of that? The point there is, at least for me, when I decide to translate a poem, what I feel is the cadences, the rhythms in Tamil can capture the sense of certain poems very effectively. And those are the poems that I take up for translation. Just to give you a very quick example, there is a poem by an Australian Aboriginal poet. And the poem goes as, "Black is the night my mother gave birth." And it moves on. So when you translate into Tamil, "Karuppu en thai ennai ஈன்ற தினம், கருப்பு என்னை பெற அவள் பட்ட வலி, கருப்பு அந்த முக சுளிப்பு." When we move that way, one, it made for a very effective translation. But as a translator, I landed up in a situation where this is the kind of lyrics that are used in movies in the name of catalog poetry. So how do we distinguish between a lyric for a movie, which would be called a catalog poem, but still make it into something very literary? And there, my choices were between Karumai and Karuppu. Okay? Because each of them have a perspective.
So before we move on to your next point, I wanted to make an announcement a little while ago. See, in the email that I sent to all of you, I had said that the time is 20 minutes. But upon reconsideration and for the discussion thing, I think we have to cut it down to 15 minutes.
Sure.
So all of us will
yes.
go over that. I'm sorry for the confusion.
Absolutely. Can understand. Moving on, when we talk about gender in translation, I think we need to ask the question, are we also going to say gender in creative writing? Gender continuum, all other sociocultural markers that we talk about. The question that ultimately we raise is, who is authorized to write or review or translate? Or are we also going to say, yes, there are very new perspectives that can emerge? The classic instance that both Minnie and I faced when I was translating Nagammal was, here is a male writer who about 60 years back wrote a novel which can be called truly a feminist novel in Tamil. So I want that thought to be kept in mind when we take our discussions forward. The question of who can review, should a reviewer be bilingual? That is where I think when we make our choices as a reader, reviewer, translator, critic, in all our avatars, we do not always know all the contextual information that is available to the writer and to the reader. So given that situation, I believe that there are lumps in the text itself. I would call them lumps, because a text that is very homogeneous, creamy, is not going to attract us that much. There are points in the text that automatically give us a cue on how we read that text. I believe the same works. Yeah? I mean, Minnie, sorry about this, but this is something that we have faced multiple times. Minnie does not read Tamil. However, she's probably one of the first few ones who would capture an error in the translation. I mean, so she would keep putting on the margin, is it your interpretation or how is the original text capturing it? So I believe all of us, when we read or review either a text or a translation, we are looking for those little lumps in the text that give us a cue on how the text flows as well as the translation. For the next few minutes, I thought we will focus on teaching translation, because that's a very important aspect that translation studies is moving towards now. So for OUP, when we began with the first text cum workbook on teaching translation, we called it translation and communication. So the idea is, can we introduce translation to students who will be taking English as an additional language? So it is a language-based focus that we wanted to focus on. The next one, we wanted to bring translations of different languages into a text meant for students of literature, English literature. The third, we move forward asking, can we also capture the socio-cultural aspects into translation? But in each of these, our very first question was, what should take precedence in that textbook? Are we focusing on the literary aspects? Are we focusing on translation? Our very obvious response was we wanted to focus on both. And that is where, if we look at the text come workbooks today, we had the text intercepted at very, very definite points where we raised textual questions. That is based on what they have read. But on the margin, we kept indicating to them what aspect of translation takes precedence. But by the time we came to the end of a unit, we were able to merge, and in the classroom, we found that students seamlessly knew which part of it was the literary text that we are focusing on and what the margin notes were doing for them. And finally, without the faculty in the classroom telling them, they were able to merge. So some of the questions that we raised, either in terms of the choice of genres, whether or not, I mean, who can take up translation, so in terms of who can translate or write Dalit works or gender-based works, what we notice is it is a very intersectional factor that is at work. Whether we are reviewing, critiquing a text, or we are looking at a translation, we cannot but miss the different sociocultural markers that are at play. Okay? So with that, I'm going to pause. Maybe I would add on when there is more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bharati. Saved for others 5 minutes. Yeah, that's right. And you have answered all these like bullet points, so because whatever you have raised, you have answered. But you know, this is a very enlightening kind of. Anyway, it was a rhetorical question, whether a Dalit can, or non-Dalit can translate Dalit's work, or a man can translate a woman's work. These are pauses. We all know the answer. You know, it doesn't happen like that, and it's an intersection. It's a mix of both. And translating poetry, you know, this is a very interesting point that you raised, because the Tamil language is such a language that invites the poetry in one's own soul, and that kind of a beautiful language it is. And whatever prosaic subject comes into, there will be verses flowing out of it. That way it is. But translating back from Tamil into English, you would not risk versifying. Yeah, this is again understandable. which you see in my personal experience, the great O.N.V. Kurup's translation, he is known for his mellifluity, using the sweetest words, the rhyming words. So we had a very close rapport, and we were friends, in spite of the age difference. So we used to go to his house, and he would recite these and compare the lines that I have translated. And then he said, Thomas, this is not the way we do. No, you don't have to be so faithful. You do something that reads like poetry in English. I don't want you to translate whatever nonsense I have written for the sake of rhythm. No, that's not the way. So it was a revealing moment for me, because such a great poet, just being practical about how to go about it.
I add a word here.
Yeah.
It was an experience for many of us when we were still postgraduate students and PhD scholars. Anytime we had a conference in Trivandrum or any conference where Professor Ayyappa Panikar was present, we would have a session where he would read out the Malayalam translation of Wasteland. And while you listened to the translation, it almost felt like you were listening to an audiobook of Wasteland. So he was able to do that, trick back to how do we get it into our languages. But he did it brilliantly. And when we raised the question with him, he gave us the same response, that don't take that faithfulness in translation too far. You take it too far that you kind of completely kill the literary sense of it. It is not useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, that is our celebrated writer, Imayam. Annamalai Imayam is his official name. So, Imayam is one of the significant contemporary writers in India, celebrated for his unflinching portrayal of Tamil culture and social realities. His work, spanning 3 decades, masterfully captures the complexities of caste, gender, politics, and other power dynamics in the Tamil society. A recipient of the Sahitya Academy Award in 2020, Lifetime Achievement Award 2018 from Canada's Tamil Literary Garden, and Kuvempu Rashtriya Puraskar National Award 2022, Imayam's writings have earned critical acclaim for their raw authenticity and profound human insight. He has 10 novels, 8 short story collections, and a novella to his credit. And Olive Books, Malayalam, brought out a collection of Imayam stories in translation through TNTB, and it has been received very well. And I proudly say that I'm the coordinating editor, so I have read through each and every word that he has written in that book, and I've enjoyed it personally. That I'm just celebrating the kind of presence here, Imayam in person. Thank you. Please. Mr. Ram will translate what Mr. Imayam, so interpret what Mr. Imayam is saying right now. Yeah. No, absolutely not. Because I don't read Tamil. Please. Okay. Yeah.
வணக்கம். முதலில் இந்த நிகழ்வை ஏற்படுத்தியிருக்கக்கூடிய நண்பர்களுக்கு என்னுடைய வணக்கத்தை நான் தெரிவித்துக் கொள்ள விரும்புகிறேன். இரண்டாவதாக, என்னுடைய எழுத்தின் மீதும் என்னுடைய எழுத்து உலகளாவிய சென்று அடைய வேண்டும் என்று தொடர்ந்து மொழிபெயர்ப்பு முயற்சியில் உதவி கொண்டே இருக்கிற, ஓடிக்கொண்டே இருக்கிற, உழைத்து கொண்டே இருக்கிற மினிக்கு என்னுடைய நன்றி. அப்புறம் என் மீது, என் எழுத்தின் மீது அக்கறை கொண்ட அழகரசன் இங்கே இருக்கிறார், அவருக்கும் என் நன்றி. இந்த நேரத்தில் சொல்லிட்டேன். மொழிபெயர்ப்பு டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர்னு எல்லாரும் சொல்கிறாங்க. நான் வந்து மறு உருவாக்கம் செய்பவர் அப்படின்ற வார்த்தையை நான் சொல்ல விரும்புகிறேன். ரீக்ரியேட்டர். நான் வந்து ஒரு 10 டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டரை சந்திச்சிருக்கேன் இது வரைக்கும். லக்ஷ்மி ஆம்ஸ்ட்ராங்கில் தொடங்கி கிருஷ்ண ஐயர், பெங்களூரில் இருக்க கீதா சுப்பிரமணியம், பர்பாஸ்தி விவன், அப்புறம் ஜிஜேவி பிரசாத் அப்படின்னு ஒரு 10 டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர், அப்புறம் சிறுகதையில் மொழிபெயர்த்த பல பார்த்துருக்கேன். சில மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர்கள் என்னை கதையை திருப்பி எழுத வைக்கிறாங்க. சில மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர்கள் எல்லாமே தெரிஞ்ச மாதிரி கதவை மூடிக்கிறாங்க. ஒரு கேள்வி கூட என்கிட்ட கேட்காத மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர் நான் சந்திச்சிருக்கேன். கிருஷ்ணய்யர் நானும் ஒரு வாரம் உட்காந்து பேசிகிட்ருக்கோம். வசந்த சூர்யாவை நானும் ஃபோனில் மணிக்கணக்கில் மாதக்கணக்கில் பேசிகிட்டே இருக்கோம். பிரபாஷ் தேவன் கூட நான் வந்து மாதக்கணக்கில் மணிக்கணக்கில் பேசிக்கிட்டே இருக்கோம். இந்த ஸ்டோரியில் வரக்கூடிய சில இந்த தண்டகாரன் இதில் வரக்கூடிய இந்த சான்ஸ்கிரிப்டை பற்றி எனக்கு தெரியாதால நான் அவங்களோட பேசுகிறேன். மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர்கள் கற்றுக் கொடுக்கிறவர்களாக இருக்கிறார்கள். இதான் உண்மை. நான் பார்த்த அளவில் மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர்கள் கற்றுக் கொடுக்கிறார்கள். ஏன்னா ஒரு எழுத்தாளரை விடவும் மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளருக்கு மொழி சார்ந்து, பண்பாடு சார்ந்து, கலாச்சாரம் சார்ந்து அறிவு அதிகமாக இருக்கணும்னு நான் நினைக்கிறேன். அப்படி இல்லாதவங்க அந்த டெக்ஸ்ட்டை சாவடிக்கிறாங்க அப்படின்னு நான் நினைக்கிறேன். தமிழ்லேருந்து வெளிநாட்டில் உலகளாவிய புகழ்பெற்ற எழுத்தாளர்லாம் இருக்காங்க. அவங்கள பற்றின வரக்கூடிய பிம்பங்களை பார்த்து ரொம்ப பிரம்மாண்டமாக இருக்குன்னு படிக்கிறாங்க. ஆனால் டெக்ஸ்ட் புக்கை படித்த பிறகு இது ஒன்றும் இல்லைன்னு முடிவு பண்ணுறான். அப்போ அவன் என்ன நினைக்கிறான்னா மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர் தப்பு செஞ்சுருக்கான்னு நினைக்கிறான். ஆதர் நல்ல ஆதர், ஆனால் மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர் தப்பாக மொழிபெயர்த்திருக்காரு போல் இருக்குன்னு ஒரு முடிவுக்கு வரான். அதே மாதிரி ஒன்றுத்துக்கும் உதவாத ஒரு ரைட்டரை மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர் தூக்கிட்டு போய் மேலே வைக்கிறாங்க. அதுக்கு தமிழில் நிறைய உதாரணங்கள் இருக்குது. குறிப்பாக பாமாவோட ரைட்டிங்ஸ் வந்து கொண்டாடப்பட்டது. அந்த ரைட்டிங்ஸை மொழிபெயர்க்கிறது சாத்தியம் இல்லைங்கிறது என்னுடைய தனிப்பட்ட கருத்து. எந்த வாய்க்கு அவங்களது இல்லை, பல ரைட்டருடைய டெக்ஸ்ட்டில் வந்து டைம் இருக்காது, இடம் இருக்காது, எதுவுமே இல்லை. அவங்க மனசில் சொல்லி கொட்டிகிட்டே இருப்பான். அது எப்படி டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் மொழிபெயர்க்காங்க எனக்கு ஆச்சரியமாக இருக்குது. ஒரு கற்பனையாக ஒரு அளவாக பண்ணிக்கிறாங்க. இந்த தமிழில் ஒரு மனப்போக்கில் அப்படின்றது இருக்குல்ல, இப்படி தான் எதிர்ப்பாங்க. மனப்போக்கு இன்னும் துல்லியமாக சொல்லணும், மனப்போக்கில் ஒரு கற்பனையாக மொழிபெயர்க்கணும். ஸோ என்னுடைய மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர்கள் நான் வந்து நிறைய பேரை செக் பண்ணுறேன், இது சரியாக இருக்கா சரியா இல்லையான்னு. இங்கே இந்தியாவில் இருக்கிற மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர்கிட்ட என்ன ஒரு பிரச்சனைன்னா, இவங்க யாருமே வந்து தமிழ்நாட்டில் இல்லை. பெரும்பகுதியானவர்கள் ஒன்று. இது பெரும்பான்மையான மொழிபெயர்கள் எல்லாமே பிராமணராக இருக்காங்க. இப்போ ஒரு தலித் லைஃப்னு நீங்கள் சொல்லக்கூடிய எந்த லைஃபையும் அவங்களுக்கு தெரியாது. அவங்க தமிழ்நாட்டிலையும் இல்லை, அல்ல தமிழ்நாட்டில் கரண்ட்டில் இருக்கிறவங்களுக்கு தமிழ்நாடு அரசியலோ அங்கே இருக்க சூழ்நிலையோ இல்லை. அவங்க தமிழ்நாட்டை விட்டு நான் கடந்து போய் 40-50 ஆண்டுகள் ஆயிடுச்சு. இவங்க எப்படி இந்த டெக்ஸ்ட்டை ரொம்ப உள்ளே இருக்கிற சில வார்த்தைகள் எப்படி வந்து மொழிபெயர்க்க எனக்கு புரியல. நான் அதுக்காக தான் என்னுடைய டெக்ஸ்ட்டை பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் நான் ஆட்களை வச்சு செக் பண்ணுறேன். அழகாசனே வந்து எங்கே தானே ஒரு மொழிபெயர்ப்பு பண்ணாங்க, மினி தான் எடிட் பண்ணாங்க. அது பல எடிட்டிங்கு பல மொழிபெயர்ப்பு சேலஞ்சஸ் பண்ணுறோம். ஆனால் எந்த கேள்வியுமே கேட்காம ஒரு டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் எப்படி மொழிபெயர்க்கிறாங்க. இப்போ பாமாவோட ரைட்டிங்கோ இல்லை வேறு யாரோ ஒரு ரைட்டர், தமிழ் ரைட்டரோட. இன்னொரு கொடூரம் என்னென்னா, தமிழ் ரைட்டர் வாக்கியத்தை தமிழாக சரியாகவே எழுத மாட்டாங்கிறது இன்னொரு பிரச்சனை இருக்குது. தப்பாக தான் எழுதுவான். இங்கே இந்த டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் என்ன பண்ணால் மேக்கப் பண்ணுறான், கேள்வியை குமரி ஆக்கிடுறான். இதுதான் நடக்குது. நான் தமிழ் டெக்ஸ்ட்டை படிக்கிறேன், படிக்கவே முடியல. ஆனால் அது வந்து சிறந்த கதைன்னு ஒரு டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் மொழிபெயர்க்கிறார். எனக்கு வினோதமாக இருக்குது. முதல்ல வாக்கியம் சரியில்லை, சென்டென்ஸ் சரியில்லை, அதில் ஃபேக்சுவல் எரர் இருக்குது. இது எல்லாமே டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் வந்து மேக்கப் பண்ணிடுறாங்க அப்படின்னு நான் நினைக்கிறேன். இதான் உண்மை. இது என்னென்னா அவங்க மேலே இருக்கிற அல்லது அரசியல் சூழலுக்காக இப்போ தலித் இலக்கியம் பற்றி எல்லாரும் ஊந்து 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 உலகம் முழுக்க மொழிபெயர்த்தாங்க. இப்போ அதை பற்றி பேச்சே கிடையாது. அது நல்லா இருக்கானா நல்லா இல்லையா? இப்போ சல்மா இருக்காங்க. சல்மாவுடைய 2வது ஜாமங்களின் கதை ஜிஜே பிரசாத் தெரியும், கேட்டால் தெரியும், வந்திருக்காருன்னு தெரியல. அந்த மொழிபெயர்ப்பு அந்த கதை ரொம்ப கச்சிடாவாக இருக்குது. எப்படி இவங்களாம் உலக புகழ் பெறுறாங்கன்னு எனக்கு புரியல. ஸோ இதுதான் டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டருடைய நிலைமைன்னு நினைக்கிறேன். நான் வந்து அவங்கள மறு உருவாக்கம் செய்கிறவங்க வேற பதவி உயர்ந்து கொடுத்துருக்கேன். ஸோ அந்த பேருக்காகவும் சூழலுக்காகவும் சந்தர்ப்பத்துக்காகவும் மொழிபெயர்க்காங்கன்னு நான் நினைக்கிறேன். ஒரு நல்ல மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர் பப்ளிஷ் பண்ணப்படலை, எனக்கு நல்ல பப்ளிஷர் கிடைக்கல, அதை பற்றி கவலைப்படாமல் இதை நான் இன்றைக்கி மொழிபெயர்க்காட்டால் இன்றைக்கு என்னால் உயிரோடு இருக்க முடியாதுன்னு ஒரு டெக்ஸ்ட் எவனை தூண்டுதோ அதுதான் நல்ல மொழிபெயர்ப்பு, அதுதான் நல்ல டெக்ஸ்ட். ஓகே.
Okay, I guess most of it got conveyed anyway. I'll summarize. Imayam, what he did now was show the practical side of translation. We have been discussing the idealistic side, what it is supposed to be, what we would like for it to be, but how it is practically happening today is what Imayam tried to convey now. He began with giving the post of a recreator or transcreator. It's not just translation, it is transcreation is what he sees translation as. But as things go, he mentioned that some translators make him write more. He wants to write more so that these works can go to English more. There are a lot of translators who do that. And there are also translators who sometimes want to make him stop writing. Okay? And he also mentioned some notable translators who have been teachers, especially when it is possible to collaborate, when he is able to talk to the translator, when the translators reach out to him while translating, that experience teaches him more about his own culture and other cultures too. And in that sense, he says translators need to be more knowledgeable about both the source culture and the target culture. He lamented that a lot of translators live outside of Tamil Nadu. They have kind of remote roots to Tamil with which they are translating, which he wonders how they are doing it, how with that connection lost, how they are able to understand the culture and translate it. He also mentioned this manapokla translate pandrathu, that is kind of an autonomous translation. They take the text in their own hands and translate it as they wish, they bend it to their will. Is that right? Is a question he raised. The hard truth today is most translators are Brahmins and most of them live outside Tamil Nadu. In that case, how exactly can they capture the nuances, the cultural essence of the original is a question that was already raised, and I don't think there is an answer for it as such in reality. Yeah, and he also mentioned there are some original texts that have a lot of errors, that the style is not easy to grasp, and sometimes these texts gain popularity outside Tamil probably because of translators. Maybe translators make up for whatever is lacking in the text. That kind of stumps him. How a text that is so inaccessible in Tamil somehow gets global readership is something that is out of imagination. And practically, translation today seems to be an activity done for publicity and based on some contextual pressures. But ideally, Imayam says, translation should be done based on what moves you. When a text moves you and pressurizes you to translate, that is when you have to take it up for translation. Otherwise, it shouldn't be any other pressure that should motivate you to translate, is kind of the summary of the session.
Thank you, Imayam and the interpreter. See, as a translator myself, I have, realized a truth about what he said. about, I don't want to name people or insinuate, but some certain writers whose works I have translated, yeah, I feel that I have improved on the text. You know, that's any translator will have that kind of an experience. I don't know. We can't expect every writer to know everything. So whatever is maybe, you know, factually wrong or structurally wrong, those things the translator corrects. You know, that's natural. But if the original author is so pathetic, then the translator should leave, should not take it up, leave it and go. That's one. And the other point that he raised about most of the translators translating Dalit works being Brahmins, living outside Tamil Nadu and lost touch with the realities or the everyday realities of Dalit life in Tamil Nadu, how do they qualify to translate these works? That's the question. But again, like the interpreter said, practical difficulties are there, you know, for the pressures of deadlines and the preference, all those things, you know, all those elements come in, and whoever can get hold of a translator, a credible translator, especially in the case of English. So that happens also, because the truth being that the translator is lost to the nuances of the realities that is currently prevalent in the source language environs, this happens. So I'm not approving it or condoning it, but stating it as a fact. So these are the things that have struck me also as convincing. Thank you.
இல்லை, நான் வந்து குறை சொல்கிறதுக்காக சொல்லலை, இதுதான் நிலவரமாக இருக்குது நான் சொல்ல வந்தேன். பிராமணர்களாகவே இருக்கிறாங்க மொழிபெயர்க்கிறவங்க, அவங்களை குற்றம் சொல்கிறதுக்காக இல்லை. ஒரு விதத்தில் அவங்க தான் படிக்கிறவங்களாம் இருக்காங்க இன்னி வரைக்கும். இங்கே எல்லாம் வந்து
he's not finding fault with translators being Brahmins or the state. He's also stating the practical realm, and it also turns out that it's the Brahmins who also
he's stating a fait accompli. You know, it's done. That is the only way things are. Yeah.
இல்லை, நான் ஒரு நிமிஷம் எடுத்துக்கிறேன். நிறைய
I'm not blaming. I didn't mean that he's blaming, but this is the situation now. He's describing the current situation. Okay.
ஒரு நிமிஷம். நிறைய பேர் என்ன எல்லாரும் கேட்குறேன், என்ன எல்லாரும் பாப்பானுக்குள்ள கூட்டணி வச்சிருக்கியா அப்படின்னு கேட்குறான். மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர் பூரா பாப்பானா இருக்கான். நான் என்ன சொல்கிறேன், எல்லாருக்கும் ஒரு சவாலாக தான் சொல்கிறேன். நீங்கள் மொழிபெயர்த்தா நாங்கள் அவங்ககிட்ட போகிறோம் அப்படின்னு. இப்போ எல்லோரும் வந்துட்டாங்க, எல்லோரும் படிச்சுட்டாங்க, ஆனால் லிட்ரேச்சர் படிக்கிறதுக்கு ஆள் இல்லை. லிட்ரேச்சர் மொழிபெயர்க்கிறதுக்கு ஆள் இல்லை. ஐஏஎஸ் இருக்காங்க, ஐபிஎஸ் இருக்காங்க, எவ்வளோ படிப்புகள் வந்தாச்சு, ஆனால் இலக்கியத்தோடு தொடர்புடைய ஆட்கள் இல்லை. அப்போ டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் வந்து இப்போ எல்லாம் ஏஐயில் பண்ணுறேன்னு வராங்க. நான் என்னுடைய எக்ஸ்பீரியன்ஸில் டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் பழகின விதத்தில் நிறைய டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் நிறைய படிச்சிருக்காங்க. அவங்களோட படிக்க கேட்க பிரமிப்பாக இருக்குது. ஆழ்ந்த படிப்பு இருக்குது, பழைய இலக்கியங்கள் மீது படிப்பு இருக்குது, கரண்ட் இலக்கியங்கள் மீது படிப்பு இருக்குது. சில பேர் வந்து சரியாக இல்லை, சில பேர் வந்து ரொம்ப தமிழ் இலக்கியத்தை வந்து ஒரு ஆழ்ந்த படித்த ஒரு படிப்பு எனக்கு தெரியுது. அதெல்லாம் சொல்கிறேன், நான் ஒரு டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டரை படிச்சுக்கிறேன்னு சொல்கிறேன். ஒரு விதத்தில் அவன் எனக்கு படித்து கொடுக்க ஒரு ஆளாக இருக்கான். அவன் மொழிபெயர்க்கும்போது அவங்களோட பேசும்போது அவங்க எனக்கு கற்றுத்தராங்க, நான் அவங்களுக்கு கற்றுத்தரேன். இந்த ரெண்டு பேரும் கற்றுக்கிறவங்களாகவும் கற்றுக் கொடுக்குறவங்களும் இருக்கும்போது தான் நல்ல மொழிபெயர்ப்பு வரும் அப்படிங்கிறத நான் நம்புகிறேன் உறுதியாக.
So, a lot of people ask him, a Dalit writer, how you are in alliance with so many Brahmins. So it's with an accusatory tone that they ask, you are in alliance with so many Brahmin translators. His response is, they turn out to be good readers, they are widely read, and they are the ones who do the work. He laid out an open challenge. He challenges other translators to come forward. Yes, a lot of people are educated, they all go into wide areas, but when it comes to literary translation, not many other options are available. So he also insisted that with translators, when he talks to translators and during the process, it's a two-way street. He learns from them as much as he gives them the context and he makes them understand the story. So it's a two-way street in that sense. But yes, if I may add an extra point, we need to find translators, non-Brahmin translators too, at least to see if it makes any difference. That's
Another point that he raised, which I understood from his Tamil, is that the learning of literature is coming down, and people, who are ill-equipped to translate literature, they are relying on AI.
Yeah, yes, yes.
So there is a paradox. So those who don't know literature, they pretend that they know literature, and they do it through AI. Even if AI is not bad, I don't say, but what AI puts out, you should be able to read, understand, and edit, and make it right. So if that is the situation, that's deplorable. Yeah.
Lacking, and
Yeah.
it may get worse. Yeah.
Yeah. So, is it over? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think I have responded piece by piece, but that's fine. Yeah. So, the next speaker is Professor R. Azhagarasan. He has a PhD in comparative literature, Tamil, English, folklore, and retired as Professor of English, University of Madras. He has published articles on issues of cultural politics in national and international journals, both in Tamil and English. He has written about the Tamil translations of Alice in Wonderland for the 150th year celebrations of the novel. Translated from Tamil to English, a collection of the critical writings of Dalit activist Ravi Kumar as Venomous Touch. So it's a very, very famous title, published in Calcutta. Remember, I have a copy of that. Yeah. Translated from English to Tamil, the Oxford Short Introduction on Post-Structuralism by Catherine Besley, published by Adayalam Publishers in 2009, edited an anthology on the concept of bhakti. Is it bhakti? Yeah, bhakti in Tamil. Bhakti in Tamil. His Tamil writings appeared as Utpagai Unarum Tarunam, 2017. Professor Azhagarasan, please.
Thank you for inviting me. In the year 1993, Minikishnan paid for 1 year subscription of the book review. That time I was a researcher. So after that I managed to get book review whenever I go out for conference, come to Delhi. Then I was greatly moved by this gesture. So after I became faculty, I paid subscription for book review in some other's name. So you never sent me book review in my name, but I kept receiving it in my student's name. So that was what I learned from Vinny-Krishna, and I continue that. Okay.
Can I ask, is it that you paid the subscription and you didn't receive copy?
No. I
paid
paid
for
in
it.
somebody else's name,
Somebody else's
student's name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the 25 years of my association with Dalit writers, Dalit movement, and my work as a translator, I have learned certain things, and I am here to share just 3 points. Number one, this is what I also share in the classroom. There is a great amount of difference between debating Dalit and debating caste. And we have been comfortably talking about Dalit literature, violence against Dalits. See, even in the TV reality show, when some atrocity happened, they have a debate. And in the middle of the debate, there is an ad comes. We have Tavar matrimony, and we have Modaliyar matrimony. And the debate continues. So, we do not talk about the caste pride, but we are quite comfortably talking about the violence against Dalits. I think there we basically miss what Dr. Ambedkar Ambedkar was saying in his canonical speech, Annihilation of Caste, where he is saying the problem is not untouchability. Untouchability is not the problem, but the caste is the problem. And then he says, if, as Gandhi says, untouchability is a sin, untouchability is evil, untouchability is crime, then what do you mean to say? So if people follow that, are you going to say that Hindus are criminals, Hindus are evil-minded, Hindus are sinners? Then he says, definitely not. Because they strongly believe that this is something, a cultural practice that they have to follow. Okay. So he says, Hindus are religious-minded. Hindus are good-mannered. That's why they are following the practice of untouchability. So, this comes in the canonical speech, and almost all those involved in the Dalit studies have read and they debated this particular text. They also teach, but they miss this particular point, and they continue to talk about Dalit as a separate category. Okay, so that's why in the classroom I tell them. If you, so I give a question also in the exam where they have to differentiate the difference between talking about caste, talking about Dalit. Okay, and there is also a methodological implication for it. So long as you are talking about Dalit, I think the preposition about is dangerous. So long as you talk about Dalits, then you are following the Gandhian methodology of Harijan. Okay, and if you talk about Dalit, then the methodology you are following is Dr. Ambedkar's methodology. So you won't be talking about Dalit, you will be talking about caste pride. The Ambedkar's Jayanti was celebrated only in the year 1991, which was the 100th birth anniversary. And it was the same year Tewar Jayanti was also celebrated. So Ambedkar Jayanti was celebrated in April 14, and in October you have the Tewar Jayanti. Now that has occupied the Tamil Nadu scenario, and that has almost decided the electoral politics. So now nobody is talking about that celebration, and it's only after 1991 many colleges have named after caste names. Okay, so many things have happened. See, on the one side, Dalit characters have entered into Indian English writing. Dalit characters have entered into Indian cinema, and parallelly, there was also a caste name attached to all institutions. I think we have to see this on par, see equally. Okay, then we'll be able to discuss caste. Then the question will not arise. The question that you asked, whether only the Dalits should write about Dalit experience, or only the Dalit translator should translate. See, all this question will not arise if you move on to the issue of talking about caste. And even in the women's writing, nobody knows how women discuss caste in that. I think that is a crucial thing, that no, it is there, but it has not come into the critical debate. Okay, so again and again we are following without our knowing. See, on the one side we may be having critical opinion about Gandhi, but methodologically we are following Gandhi's methodology. Okay, see, for example, I am telling you, Vasant Moon in his autobiography, he says, when he was doing the school, I think 5th or 6th standard, there was an announcement about scholarship. And the teacher asked, come on, the scholarship for Arjans have come, and I list the names. He listed all the names. He never stood up. Vasant Moon never stood up. And finally the teacher asked, I know you are a Harijan, why didn't you stand? Then he said, I am not Harijan, I am a Dalit. So he recorded in that autobiography. I think there, I think he is making a difference. Harijan is a term of other, and Dalit is a term of me, and a sense of assertion. I think this is lacking in the debate on Dalit question in many parts. And there is also a certain amount of uniqueness in the debate on caste and Dalit in Tamil Nadu, because in the period when Gandhi and Ambedkar was set as polarized leaders, Tamil Nadu never maintained that. Because in the history, during the period of separate electorate, Swami Sahajananda, who was a staunch Gandhian, he campaigned for separate electorate supporting Dr. Ambedkar. And Veerammal, who was also a Gandhian, also was part of the Periyar, Dravidian movement, and parted from Periyar for a brief while after the Mudugulattur riots. Okay. She campaigned for Dr. Ambedkar during the separate electorate. See, even when they campaigned for Dr. Ambedkar, they remained Gandhian. They don't see it as a contradiction. And a similar thing happened in the context of Durban conference. So where before the year 2001, Dalit leaders were saying that the leaders who were, the scholars who were talking about caste on par with race should not be allowed, because race is a Western category and caste is something Indian. But when they try to move on the category to the Durban conference, they take an opposite stand where they say that caste is a kind of racism. At the time, the scholars took the other point of view. So it's an interesting point of understanding how issues are discussed and positions are taken in respect to a particular moment. So I think Tamil context is something unique, and again this has a lot of implication. For example, since I translated Ravi Kumar's writing, since I was co-editor of that Oxford anthology, sometimes when I applied for a project in the Classical Tamil Institute or some other places, I was not selected, and later on they conversed. They wanted to check whether I am a Dalit. Then a friend of mine told me, the director asked me whether you are a Dalit, so you can apply next time, you will get it. See, similarly, there was an interesting point that came when we worked on the Oxford anthology. It was about the writings of Meena Kandasamy. I don't know why that question came in that discussion. So Meena Krishnan asked me, is she a Dalit? Can we include? Similar question appeared when Susi Taru and Satyanarayana compiled the Penguin anthology. Okay. Now Ravi Kumar was also sitting there. Meena Krishnan asked me, and Ravi Kumar said, you can ask Azhagarasan. Everyone knows that she is not Dalit. But Ravi Kumar hesitated to say, and he said, you can ask Azhagarasan. I said, no. And Meena Krishnan asked me, how do you know? When he said no, how do you know? I said, I was a doctoral committee member. So for Meena, so I know neither of her parents are Dalits. But Meena Kandasamy's works are prescribed in several universities in India and outside as part of Dalit literature. I think, see, initially she could not resist, and after the point, even if she wants, she could not confess. In a conference conducted at JNU, G.J. Prasad asked me, I want to invite Dalit writers for the conference from Tamil Nadu. I suggested some writers, see, this is what I was telling for the past 10 years. Please invite writers who talk in Tamil, okay? And you can invite a translator, or you can have a translator in Delhi. They can give a summary of the talk, okay? So just because you want someone to talk only in English, your choice becomes limited. Then he suggested, why not Meena Kandasamy? I said, no, she is not. After that, he invited her to the conference, and S. Ananda was also there, and everybody was talking, and I was witnessing all these events. I think this problem occurs because we limit Dalit literature only to identity politics. I think this problem occurs in the disability studies and even other domains. I think we need to move a little beyond the identity question. I think there translation plays a very significant role at the philosophical level. For me, the prefix trans is very important. Trans-individual, transnational, so it's moving beyond. You are moving beyond yourself. See, in the history of world literature, we have seen writers committing suicide, but no translator committed suicide. No, because translators feel themselves responsible for somebody. Translators are willing to listen. So it's not, say, they are too conscious that it's not their own voice. I think in that sense, the second question, whether you can consider translator as the author or recreator, I think that feeds the ego of the translator, and then gradually they will become writer and they will commit suicide. So now the takeaway for me from this, the last point that I want to talk about is the review of the translation. I think 7 reviews appeared for Oxford Anthology, and of the 7 reviews, Nathaniel gave a very lengthy positive review, and all the 6 reviews gave a comparative review of both Penguin Anthology as well as Oxford Anthology. Okay, and all the reviews downplayed the Oxford Anthology, and some reviewers abused Oxford Anthology for not having the personal account of the writers as they could find in the Penguin Anthology. The Penguin Anthology was designed in such a way that for each and every writer they have some 3-4 pages write-up about the, it was a report of the conversation they had with the writer. Okay, and the Oxford Anthology was strictly academic, and we just gave a proper introduction, and then at the end we gave bio notes. Okay, and almost 6 reviewers find fault with this methodology. And number one question, what did they compare? Who asked them to compare? Number 2, in the Penguin Anthology, on the cover page, you have Ravi Kumar's name as the advisor for Tamil. And in the Penguin Anthology, in the acknowledgements, Susi Taro acknowledged me for traveling with her to meet the writers. Okay, so both Ravi Kumar and myself worked for both anthologies. That was the truth. Okay, but the reviews blasted the Oxford Anthology and elevated the Penguin Anthology. So I think these reviews were written even before the reviewers write the review.
Okay. Like for some movies nowadays. Okay. Yeah.
I think that was a hurting experience for me as someone who did the work. Okay, and another important point was of the 6 reviewers, 5 reviewers pointed out why Pomani was not included in the Oxford Anthology, and Pomani was not included even in the Penguin Anthology. That is because Pomani refused to be called as a Dalit writer. Okay. This is again a unique feature of the Tamil Dalit writing. Imayam refused to call himself as a Dalit writer right from the beginning. He was, for the past 20 years, he was researching that. He asked everyone to regard him as a writer. Okay. So, see, on the one side, you have a claim for identity as a Dalit writer. On the other side, there was also a resistance. I think this phenomena is not found in other parts of India. So, see, knowing fully well, again, they find fault with this phenomena, and then Judith, who did a conference in Delhi on Dalit literature, she said, if he doesn't want the tag, then why did he come for the conference? I think that is too naive a question. I think she was not able to understand the uniqueness of the Dalit question in Tamil Nadu. I think with these remarks, I think we can, I can close this. Maybe I can add some issues.
Thank you, Professor Azhagarasan. And let me quickly wind up because we have tea waiting for us after this. But to begin from the end, you know, like how Imayam and Pumani refuse to identify themselves as Dalit writers. In Malayalam, we have many writers like that. You see, S. Joseph, the poet, is a celebrated poet in his own right. He doesn't have the need for him to be in a reservation position. He is a leading poet in Malayalam. But again, he had to come out, even after winning the Kerala Sahitya Academy Award for Poetry in the general category, if you can say so. He had to come out in 2005 as a Dalit. Then again, in 2011, he went back. This is the kind of thing, because at the end of it all, everyone says this. See, if you are a writer, you are a writer. You are not a Dalit writer, you are not a woman writer. You don't need to be known by categories like these. You are a writer, out and out. If you're a writer, you are a writer. If you're not, you're not. So this is the kind of position some people take.
But it has a function during a particular time.
Yeah. Yeah, the other thing
In the 1990s it had...
Yeah, where this other part why I wanted to say, when I was just stirring the pot, these were poses, just raising this, the Dalit writer can be translated by a non-Dalit translator kind of thing. This is just a brainstorming kind of trick, that's nothing more than that. And so much came out as a result, and that's very good. I'm happy. And 1991 being the marker, that Ambedkar Jayanti triggering the flowering of the latter day Dalit resurgence. That is a historical point. I'm happy that you mentioned that, because in Malayalam also, in most of the sitting in Indian literature, I know I've been watching this and publishing it also. There was a newfound, 1991 is important for many other things, like opening up the economy, like so many other things. And just 1 year later, we have the Babri Masjid pulled down, the riots, everything. There's a drastic change, and 1991 is a marker, really. So you have, along with all the other things, this also happening, and that is a remarkable thing to mention. And what else? Yeah, the caste category. This was news to me. I did not know this. If you mean, if Dalit, if you follow Dalit, it is the Gandhian. That I did not know. If you no, that's what he said, and I just
it's
noted.
It's an assertive term.
And Ambedkar is, if you mention caste.
I Dalit, he Harishankar.
Yeah. So caste is a marker for.
Has always been used as a third person singular.
Okay.
And the Dalit functions as first person singular.
Yeah. So the differentiation is the caste is the other one. Yeah. So these are new for me, at least personally. These are new revelations. Thank you. So I think we should all rush for the coffee and come back. I'm a senior research scholar in the Department of English at Stella Maris College, Chennai. She holds an MA in English Literature from the English and Foreign Languages University, Shillong. Oh. Arasi is currently a senior research scholar in the Department of English at Stella Maris College, Chennai. She holds an MA in English Literature from the English and Foreign Languages University, Shillong. Her interest areas include gender studies, subaltern studies, critical theory, and popular culture. She writes regularly on gender and caste issues for independent digital news platforms. Her doctoral thesis, which she is working on, focuses on the performative aspect of caste in studies, how the mandated caste scripts help in maintaining the caste order and its social reproduction. Aazhi, please.
A big pond. And in the order that was decided this morning, Azhagarasan sir was supposed to follow me so that he could make up like what Imayam said translators do for the bad original. So while everyone here has an established career and has such extensive work to their name, I'm still figuring out what to do with my life. So I started reviewing books for TBR a few years back, because I was at that stage in my life where I was told I was not supposed to say no to new opportunities. So I'm still stuck in the same stage, I guess, because that's why I said yes to this event as well, even though the intrusive voice in my head keeps going as to what you're doing here. So I will just share my experience of reviewing books or translations for TBR and focusing particularly on the practical difficulties that arise while reviewing a translation. So these might also sound like confessions, so please do pardon me. So when I receive a translated book for reviewing, the English translation would be my first experience of reading the book, of getting to know the book, because I wouldn't have read the original before that. In most cases, I never get to read the original also. So in my reading, what the text is takes precedence over how the translation is done. So the review also reflects the same, unfortunately. So the labor, aesthetics, and the intention of the translator that has gone into the translation, unfortunately, take a backseat. So while reading the book, what stands out in the translation are, unfortunately, the mistakes, the awkward phrases, and many grammatical errors that occur in the translation. And also when it's not lucid, when there is ambiguity in the translation, and when a few places where it's difficult to match the pronoun with the antecedent, and then you have to read to make sure what the text says, and when the sentences fall flat. So these are instances that stand out while you read a translation, and it's a very superficial reading of the translation. So you can mark these instances out when you read the translation, but again, you need the original to compare the translation with. So how do we procure the original book? Because for reviewing, we receive only the translated book, not the original. So we need to, and finding the original is not always easy. The easiest book that I was able to find was a novel called Kadavul Thodangiya Idam. It was easy. I mean, the translation was Where God Began. Amazon order, I got the novel. I was able to read both the original and the translation. And this was the only instance where I was able to produce at least one decent paragraph on some aspects of the translation, because I was able to read both the original and the translation. But for many books that have been coming out, especially for anthologies and a few edited ones, the book's first existence is in English. It doesn't follow an original Tamil source. Recently, there's one book that Bama edited. The book's materialization happened to be in English. So where do we go for the original source? So it was a collection of 12 short stories written by Tamil Dalit women. So hunting down each of these short stories would have been a very difficult task. So it's like Bama calling up people and then getting the short story. So I would have also had to do the same. So then there would be very little difference between pre-publishing and post-publishing process. So how do we look for original source? And for books that are not in Tamil, because I know only Tamil and English to a certain level. So I had to review K.K. Kochu's Dalitan, which had come out in English. So it's a Malayalam translation. So if we don't know the source language, our go-to way is to find other translations and then compare and then make maybe some value judgment. But now, where are the multiple translations of Dalit works? Because it's only now that we are getting the first installment of English translations of Dalit works. So we do not really have other translations to go to. So when I review, it mostly focuses on why the text has to be picked up to read, and not particularly the translation, because this is the only translation available. There aren't any other translations available. So review would mostly focus on why the text has to be read. So the next challenge is, even if you have the original, and then even if you're able to read the original, how would we evaluate the translation? What tools do we have to conduct this study? Because you can provide instances of how well the translation has been done, or you can pick out instances as to how the translation has failed. But again, how do I make these value judgments? It's like, in what authority would I make? Because if someone asks, how can you say this? Because have you translated anything? The reviewers, at least in my case, the answer would be no. So in what authority would I be making such statements? So, and when the conventional methods of assessing translations have become outdated, like judging the fidelity of a work, so what do we do? Because we can no longer make statements as the translation is not faithful to the original, because what is the need for the translation to be faithful to the original is a question that we are asking now. So if the translation need not be faithful to the language, the style of the original, to the author, to the language, to the audience, then how do we judge a translation? How do we evaluate a translation? And when a translation is considered a creation in its own right, again, how do we go from here? Then we can judge maybe the integrity of the work, which is also a very problematic term. So this brings me to the second point that I would like to make. The translations that I have received of Dalit literature, all the translations are done by translators belonging to one particular caste. Again, it's a post-identity dialogue that has been happening so far.
You don't want to name the community?
Sorry?
You don't want to name?
I don't want to name. I would be naming the cast, of course, but maybe later. So we are having a post-identity dialogue so far. So I'm just trying to take a step back and then maybe analyze why we need to have a post-identity dialogue. Let's stick to identity politics for a little bit, because this is a trap that we keep falling into. But have we found methods to escape this trap? Because in translations, it's Dalit literature translated by privileged caste authors. So this instance, I mean, a long time back in the field of social sciences in India, Gopal Guru identified this, and then he came up with this concept called empirical Shudras and theoretical Brahmins. So empirical Shudras and theoretical Brahmins, where he spoke about the process of gatekeeping and how the hierarchical past survives in the cultural present. So he spoke about a lot of things. This point could be applied to the field of translation as well, because we have fictional Shudras and then we have translating Brahmins. So I mean, I again understand it's very problematic for us to reduce everything to a person's identity. And this could also be a result of my work in journalism a little bit. I do write articles for this online, digital platform called the News Minute, and then they have a very strict non-appropriation policy. So whenever I pitch in a story, there are questions that I need to ask myself. Am I the best person to write this? Is this my space to occupy? And then do I have a moral right in addressing this issue? So these are the questions that I'm forced to ask myself, and these are the questions I think everyone should apply to literature as well. Because even if we take out the labels, when you take Dalit literature is produced by those who are oppressed by caste. And then it is translated by those who benefit and those who are privileged by caste. So even if you remove the labels, this is how we can break this down. So, and yesterday there was a lot of discussion regarding locating the translator within the translation. So I'll give you a few instances where the caste of the translator sneaks into the text or slips into the text as well. So these instances are not from the books that I've reviewed, so staying clear of that. So these instances are from Cho Dharman's Kugai. So Cho Dharman is another Tamil Dalit writer, and then he also has won the Sahitya Academy Award. So I'll just give you a context. There are two Dalit characters who are just returning from a funeral, and then they are intercepted by... Should I? Okay. Okay, so it's translated by Vasanta Surya, and then it's published by Oxford. So there are just two people, two Dalit characters who are returning from a funeral and who are intercepted by a person. And then in order to avoid any trouble, they are just identifying the caste. All the three belong to the same caste, so they are just identifying their caste. So in Tamil it goes, Nammal Daya, Melapattikku, Tuttikku poittu varum. This is the Tamil. So the English translation goes, you are one of his only ayah. We are on our way back from a mourning at Melapatti. So one of the problems here is, Nammal Daya is the Tamil. It's like, we are of the same caste. We are of the same community. It says we. In English it says, you are one of his only ayah. So caste pervades the structures of language that we use, and you is not generally used by lower caste people, because caste dictates the way that we speak. So you entails some sort of superiority or at least some level of equality which is denied to the lower caste people. So it's not, I mean, even when we want to be polite in Tamil, irrespective of caste, we do not usually say you. We say நம்ம வீட்டுக்கு வாங்க, which means எங்க வீட்டுக்கு வாங்க, நீங்க எங்க வீட்டுக்கு வாங்க. But we usually are a little bit inclusive, not a comment on the community, but this is how it is. So this usage of the word you, so caste nuance gets missed out here. So another instance which is very blatant, one very angry, emotional Dalit character refers to refers to a dominant caste character as Chandala, Sandalan. So this dominant caste person sexually exploits Dalit women. So he's very angry. So this is a word that he used, not in front of the dominant caste character, but this is how he refers to that person. So again, the English translation goes, I'll read out the full, the lines. So, no woman in any Pallar, Parayar or Chaklian household, these are the three Dalit castes in Tamil Nadu. So, no woman in any Pallar, Parayar or Chaklian household has been left untouched by the loincloth strings of those scoundrels. They are the real outcasts, Chandalas. So, in Tamil, this line is not there. It's the word that is used is Chandala, because that is, though it is a casteist slur, the casteist nuances are lost because people do not know. So Chandala is a word that we usually use for abusing people or for scolding people. Only that is there. So I can get where the translator is coming from, because maybe she wanted to provide conceptual clarity to the word Chandala. So, but this could very well have been a short footnote. But what the translator does is that she accidentally ends up reinforcing the caste structure by this rhetoric of who the real outcasts and who the fake outcasts are. So this rhetoric irony is very unnecessary here, because the Tamil original does not carry the line at all. So it could have just been the word and then maybe a footnote to explain the word. So these are instances where the casteness slips into the translation. So of all the things that get lost in a translation, this loss, one of the very purposes of Dalit literature, which is to say maybe challenge the literary and social hierarchy that is there. I think this purpose gets lost in the translation, because we have Dalit writers writing the work, and then the status quo is maintained when the translators are from a particular caste. But yet, this work can be seen as also collaborative, as an anti-caste activity, because people, the translator and the writer belonging to two extremes in the caste order can work together. And like Imayam sir said, it could be a learning process as well, because they can share the knowledge, their experience, and then they can work out their prejudices, biases, and then which could ultimately lead to a dismantling of the system. But again, in a society that is very much still casteist in essence, where every aspect of our being is determined by a caste, to think of a post-identity dialogue seems to be a wishful thinking. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Aazhi. Very good, really good.
Very good.
Yeah. And I think I will also confess something about, in my personal experience, sitting at Indian literature for 20 years, I have never, except in the case of Malayalam, I have never had the opportunity or the kind of time to check the translation against the original. So it's been going institutionalized. So you don't have to feel guilty about that. And that is a practical thing. You can't, in every case, check the translation against the original. And the inherent injustice or inequality in these are the things, these are the, we can't, to get these things done, I think we have to just let them go by. I think, that's the practical kind of thing to do, and practical things are not always right, but, things get done. The identity trap again, identity trap is that argument that, again, we've been talking about that, about the Brahmin, Dalit, binary or non-Brahmin binary in translation and in even review, all that. So that also again, I don't know whether we can, avoid polarization of the extreme if we follow that kind of thing. And you're right about calling it a trap, because that you don't get out of the trap otherwise. So these are practical approaches and realistic approaches. I very much appreciate that. Then the translation, just now what you quoted, Vasanta Surya's translation, and do you think that there is an element of condescension involved in explaining away out of context something that is implied without mentioning it? Do you think so? I think you should have your own opinion about that. When you say that, you can be. Yeah. That's it.
Speak up. I think there is a little bit of condensation.
Yeah, that's exactly what.
Just leave Chandala, the word original, many people won't understand. And for me, one of the functions of translation is to enable people to access the text.
So the clarity for the word can be provided, and then the book the translation also has a lot of footnotes. So this could have been a footnote instead of saying they are the real outcasts, because the character doesn't have that conceptual clarity or the irony of the whole situation. So
this is an elaboration and explanation which was not necessarily, it was avoidable. Just mention the exact meaning of the word Chandala and leave it at that. That was not done. That's what it says.
May I say a word, please?
Yeah.
I think this is a fairly common problem in translation, that words have different meanings in different contexts. While Chandala has an etymological kind of a meaning, which was given in the footnote. It refers to so and so, etc., right? But the footnote. Yeah, I know. But what your suggestion was that she could have given a footnote, right? Yeah. So that's what I was saying. Like in this case, Chandala was used as an abusive term, right? And so it's something like like any other abusive word, like a rascal, bastard, whatever, you might use. But that would have been even more inflammatory, to use something like that. Though in context it may have been right, it's an abusive term. But to use that is even more sensitive, isn't it? I'm just asking.
No, I'm not saying the word Chandala has to be kept away. Use the word Chandala, but do not add that they are the real outcasts, because that line was not there in the original at all. So there's no differentiation between real outcasts and fake outcasts.
Yeah. No. If supposing that addition is not there, what would be a satisfactory translation of that line?
There's no line. There's only one word, the Chandalas.
Yeah.
So Chandala,
that could have been
Chandala.
retained.
Yes, that can be retained, and in the footnote you can provide the history of the word. Sorry?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not a word that is all that familiar. Contextualize.
And the book does have a lot of footnotes.
In my opening remarks, I had my personal practice right now. I am avoiding all footnotes, glosses, everything for the latest thing. I think from the context, or you have the latest AI to take you to where you want to. So you don't have to do that. It's my personal thing. Is about, you can leave out the footnote altogether.
But AIs don't provide contextual meanings.
But
right?
Even
Therefore,
Google, no. But Google gives you a fairly good idea about what it is. So it is not that you are closed or shut out, because if you do this, in my experience, in my latest publishing experience, whatever footnotes I had given, they have just removed that and incorporated in the text. It's been happening for a long time. In commercial publishing or in trade publishing, it is not done. Only in academic publishing they are retaining it now. Yeah.
Can I just
Yeah. Yeah.
To give a
Yeah.
footnote or not to give a footnote, but something else. About the inclusion of an additional sentence that draws our attention to a particular situation, which she thinks is uncalled for. At least it
that
draws
was
our
the
attention
yeah.
to the focus gets shifted. If that becomes a pattern, yes. So if it is one or two examples, because it's not, that's why it's very tricky or very difficult to say, is it really out of condensation or is it in neglect, or where is it coming from? It's very difficult to identify.
No, just to repeat
Yeah.
what I was saying,
Yeah.
my personal experience is that if there are lots of footnotes, I simply ignore them and try to continue reading the main narrative. So
Yeah.
footnotes don't really work in that sense.
That's true. Yeah. Shall we come back to? Yeah.
After
Yeah.
that, I just
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you for that analysis. But what about the rest of the translation? You had nothing to say about some of the very beautiful passages because we read it together with Joe Dharman. I mean, you can't. This is the problem with reviewing. They'll pick up one or two things. They'll just smash the rest of all that labor, and it's a very big book. The fabulous discussion of the owl and all that. All of that you've missed. You just want to pick up this thing. And this whole thing of Brahmin and Dalit and caste and this, I just want to say this translation is a literary activity. It's a literary product. It is about being creative. It's about empathizing with that text. Of course, now there's a gold rush and there are people who are really not fit to translate also going after and publishers, very ignorant publishers. The salespeople are even more ignorant than the editors. There are all that churning is going on. But the core of it is the literary effort. And who has the language expertise? Somebody who's read and read and read, reading for 8 hours a day. So naturally, those who have the vocabulary, that data, that bank, rich vocabulary, reading different texts, ancient texts, modern texts, poetry, and who talk about these things, perhaps those who have the leisure to do this, naturally they'll be the people who pick up the texts and who make the effort. There are people who translate whole works without even a promise of publication. So I don't know how this should be so important a point in the identity of the translator. So at one time, the translator's name wasn't even on the cover of a book. You don't know who translated it. So,
I think, if I may,
Right.
Minnie has answered the question that I was going to, two questions I had. No, I've got the mic here. So, she has talked, I was trying to understand, and I was talking to Azhagarasan also, why this identity and the emphasis on Brahmins translating and so on should happen at all in your consciousness, in any creative writing. But Minnie has answered that. Should we not be making it just a matter of a creative work? Whatever is you have written, it's translated. After all, doesn't the author have the freedom? If you feel that the Brahmin translator is sort of editing out or becoming elitist and trying to erase certain things, it's up to you to say, no, that is not what I meant. Ilya, neenga sollalaam illaya? So,
நிச்சயமா சொல்கிறோம், சண்டை போடுறோம்.
சண்டை போடணும்.
போடுறேன்.
ஆமா.
நிறைய உதாரணங்கள் சொல்ல முடியும். ஒருத்தங்க வந்து நான் மாட்டு கொட்டகைன்னு எழுதியிருந்தேன், அவங்க கார் ஷீட்டுன்னு மாற்றிட்டாங்க.
ஓகே, அது ஒன்று போட்டங்களா தலையில்? அந்த மாதிரி கிடையாது. ஓகே.
இல்லை, அது வந்து இப்போ நான் பழஞ்சோறுன்னு எழுதுறேன், அவங்களுக்கு தெரியல. இப்போ தீட்டு துணின்னு ஒரு வார்த்தை இருக்குது. தீட்டு துணி
அது என்னது?
மாதவிடாய் டைமில் பெண்கள் பயன்படுத்தக்கூடிய துணி.
ஓகே.
அது அவங்களுக்கு மறந்து எல்லாமே அவங்க இங்கிலீஷ்லேயே தான். இது நிறைய ரைட்டர்ஸுக்கும் சவாலாக இருக்குது. சில ரைட்டர்ஸ் என்ன சொல்கிறாங்க, உங்களுக்கு பிடிக்கலாம் அதை எடுத்துகிட்டு இப்போ ட்ரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்ணுன்னு சொல்கிறாங்க. நான் அதை பண்ண மாட்டேன். ஒரு கமா கூட இருக்கணும்னு நான் விரும்புவேன். நான் அந்த ட்ரான்ஸ்லேட்டரோட தொடர்ந்து ஃபைட் பண்ணுறேன். அவங்களுக்கு நம்ம சில விஷயங்களை சொல்லித்தர வேண்டியிருக்கு. அதுதான் பிரச்சனை. இப்போ பிராமணிங்கிற ட்ரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் வந்து தப்பாக மொழிபெயர்க்காங்கிற அர்த்தம் நான் சொல்ல வரல. அந்த நெருக்கம் குறைவாக இருக்குதுன்னு நான் சொல்ல வந்தேன். அந்த அந்த இப்போ உதாரணமாக வந்து உசுப்பு அப்படின்னு ஒரு வார்த்தை இருக்குது. உசுப்பு அப்படின்னு சொல்லிருக்கு. அந்த உசுப்புன்னா அந்த செருப்பு தைக்கிறாங்க இல்லையா, அவங்க வந்து அந்த ஊசியில் அந்த நூலை கோக்கத்து முடியாது, அந்த ஊசியில் இப்படி வச்சுட்டு தைப்பான். உசுப்புன்னா அவங்களுக்கு தெரியல. அது நான் அவங்க குறையா சொல்லலை. ஸோ சில ரைட்டர்ஸ் கூட இங்கே பிரச்சனை என்னென்னா, ட்ரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் ஆத்தரோட நிறைய நேரம் செலவிடணும்னு நான் விரும்புகிறேன். ஆத்தரும் ட்ரான்ஸ்லேட்டரோட நிறையா செலவிடணும்னு நினைக்கிறேன். இங்கே தமிழ்நாட்டில் இந்தியாவில் எப்படின்னு தெரியாது. இங்கே இந்த ட்ரான்ஸ்லேட்டருக்குள்ளாரே ஒரு பாலிடிக்ஸ் இருக்குது. யாரை மொழிபெயர்க்கிறது, யாரை மொழிபெயர்க்கக்கூடாது, எந்த கம்பெனிக்கு மொழிபெயர்க்கணும் அப்படின்லாம் இருக்குது. நான் வந்து ஒரு 90% தான் அவங்களால மொழிபெயர்க்க முடியும்னு நான் நம்புகிறேன். இப்போ வந்து செடல்னு ஒரு நாவல் இருக்குது. அதில் 4-5 பேர் அதை ட்ரை பண்ணாங்க. அவங்களால மொழிபெயர்க்கிறதுக்கு செட்டில் ஆகலை. ரொம்ப ரூரல் லைஃபு, ரொம்ப லாங்குவேஜஸ் இருக்குது, அதை கண்டுபிடிக்கவே முடியல, அவங்களுக்கு தெரியல. ஸோ அதுக்கு அவங்களுடைய குறைன்னு சொல்ல மாட்டேன். நம்ம என்ன பண்ணணும், இது நான் இந்த மீனிங்கில் சொல்லி. இப்போ உதாரணமாக மீரான் மைதீன் இருக்கார்ல ஒரு ரைட்டர், அவர் இந்த கடலோர வாழ்க்கை எழுதினார். அந்த கடலோர வாழ்க்கையை வந்து பிரபாஸ் சிவன் மொழிபெயர்க்கிறாங்க. நான் நிச்சயமாக உங்களால் இது மொழிபெயர்க்க முடியாது நான் சொல்கிறேன். நான் உங்களுக்கு நேராக சொன்னேன், இது உங்களுக்கு சாத்தியமே இல்லை நான் பண்ணிட்டேன்னு சொன்னாங்க, நான் அதை நம்பலை. இப்படி நிறைய சொல்ல முடியும். இப்போ சல்மாவுடைய 2ஆம் ஜாமன் கதையை வந்து ஜி.ஜே. பிரசாத் பண்ணுறாரு. நான் என்ன சொன்னேன், உங்களால் அதுக்கு பண்ண முடியாது, கொஞ்சம் இதாக சிரமமாக இருக்குது, அவருக்கு படிக்கிறதுக்கு சிரமமாக இருக்குன்னு பேசியிருக்கோம். இங்கே என்னென்னா, இது ஜாதி சம்மந்தப்பட்டது இல்லை. இலக்கிய மொழிபெயர்ப்புங்கிறது சாதி சம்மந்தப்பட்டது இல்லை. உங்கள் படிப்பு சம்மந்தப்பட்டது, உங்களுடைய மொழி அறிவு சம்மந்தப்பட்டது, உங்கள் வாழ்க்கை சம்மந்தப்பட்டது, உங்களுடைய ஈடுபாடு சம்மந்தப்பட்டது. இலக்கியங்கிறது வந்து வெறும் கதை சொல்லலை, இது மொழியை உருவாக்குற ஒரு செயல்பாடுன்ற அக்கறை சம்மந்தப்பட்டது. எத்தனையும் இருந்தால் அவர் தான் நல்ல மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளர்.
Yeah, I'll quickly translate. So, Imayam pointed out some aspects. I'll give you the context first before going into the example. For example, familiarity with the context, familiarity with the language. So, he doesn't have anything against caste or the identity itself. As long as the translator is ready to put in some time, make it a collaborative effort, and have the dedication to understand how the language functions, how the context is embedded in the text. So in that sense, he gave some examples. Mattu Kottagai is a place where cows are tied, mostly in the backyard or sorts. It was translated as car shed. I can only assume it was a typo, or I hope it was a typo. Yeah. So another example is Teettu Thuni. Teettu Thuni is a cloth used during a menstrual period. It has its stigma associated with it. So when a translator doesn't even know what it is, at least the least they can do is consult the author. When that doesn't happen is what problems arise. There are technical words like usupu is a word Imayam brought up now. Cobblers use this during stitching. Okay, it's a technical word, but when a story deals with a cobbler's life, this word will definitely appear. You cannot ignore the word either, and you can't retain it as usupu because the context will be lost. In such cases, the translator, the least they can do is approach the author, understand the context. But say in Miran Moideen's case, dealing with a coastal life, okay, it's a whole novel dealing with the Muslim language and coastal life. So it's kind of doubly removed from the translator. In such cases, it will be a big challenge for a translator to capture all the nuances of the text it's as good as sitting with the author and recreating the whole novel. I don't know if the author will have so much time to spare in such cases. Those cases, Imayam feels, will turn out to be failures. The translation can never capture it faithfully. And as it is, only 90% can be captured is what Imayam feels. But again, he insists that it is not the caste identity that is a problem. As long as the translator is ready to spend time and it's dedicated and is curious about how language functions, how language reflects culture, how culture is embedded in language. As long as the translator is conscious of this and they are willing to put in the effort, he doesn't have a problem with it.
Thank you.
ஒரு நிமிஷம். நான் வந்து கிரியா பப்ளிஷோட ஒரு 27 ஆண்டுகள் வேலை பார்த்துருக்கேன். அவர் கொண்டு வந்த டிக்ஷனரி மிக முக்கியமான டிக்ஷனரி. அதில் உதாரணம் கொடுக்கப்பட்டிருக்க உதாரணங்கள் எல்லாமே பிராமண உதாரணமாக இருக்கும். எடுத்துக்காட்டு வாக்கியங்கள் இருக்கு இல்லையா, எடுத்துக்காட்டு வாக்கியங்கள் எல்லாமே பிராமண உதாரணங்களாக இருக்கும். என்னுடைய புத்தகத்தில் அவருக்கு வந்து ஏதாவது கரெக்ஷன் தெரியலன்னா, நான் இல்லாதப்போ அவராக ஏதாவது கரெக்ஷன் போட்டார்னா அது கிட்டத்தட்ட பிராமணிகள் வேர்டாக தான் இருக்கும். நான் அதை படிக்கும்போது இது என்ன சம்மந்தமே இல்லாமல் இருக்குது, அவருக்கு தெரியல, அது குற்றம் இல்லை. அப்போ நீங்கள் டிக்ஷனரி கிரியாவில் இருக்கிற எடுத்துக்காட்டு வாக்கியங்கள் 70% அவருக்கு என்னென்ன எடுத்துக்காட்டுகள் தெரிஞ்சுமோ. இப்போ கூரை இருக்குது, கூரை என்ன பழைய காலத்தில் கூரை இருந்தது, என்னென்னா அந்த வாசப்படி இருக்குது, இப்படிங்கன்னு ஒவ்வொன்றுக்கும் இருக்கும். இதில் என்னென்னா செட்டியார் வீட்டில் இருக்கக்கூடிய சமையலறைக்கு ஒரு பேர் இருக்கும், புள்ளமார் வீட்டில் ஒரு பேர் இருக்கும், ஐயர் வீட்டில் ஒரு பேர் இருக்கும், எங்கள் வீட்டில் ஒரு பேர் இருக்கும். உங்களுக்கு என்ன தெரியுமோ அதுதான் நீங்கள் பயன்படுத்துகிறீங்க. அந்த ஆதாரை கூப்பிட்டு இது என்னது உங்களுக்கு தெரியலன்னா இது என்னது, இது எதுக்காகனா, நான் ராமகிருஷ்ணன் வேலை பார்த்த காலத்துலேயும் சரி, டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டரோட வேலை பார்த்த காலத்துலேயும் சரி, அவங்க என்ன நினைக்கிறாங்க, அந்த நேரத்தில் ஏதோ ஒரு வார்த்தை அவங்களுக்கு தெரிஞ்ச ஒரு வார்த்தையை போட்டு முடிச்சுன்னு நினைக்கிறாங்க. இந்த டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் முடிக்க விரும்புகிறாங்க. இது நிறைய உதாரணங்கள் இருக்குன்ற நேரம் இல்லை. நிறைய என்னுடைய கதைகளிலே அவங்க எப்படி வந்து வாக்கியத்தை மாற்றுறாங்க, சொல்ல மாற்றுறாங்க, இது பொருத்தமாக இல்லை அப்படின்றாங்க. நான் திருப்பி திருப்பி அவங்களோட வம்பு வளர்த்து இப்படி போடாதீங்க, நான் வேறு அர்த்தத்தில் போட்டிருக்கேன், இது வேறு அர்த்தம், வேறு அர்த்தம் நான் திருப்பி திருப்பி சொல்கிறதா இருக்குது. ஸோ அது வந்து என்னன்னா, நீங்கள் டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் பெரும்பகுதி இப்போ லக்ஷ்மி காமிஸ்ட்ராங்கிற அவங்க வந்து தமிழ்நாட்டில் எவ்வளோ கடைசி காலம் இருந்தாங்க. கோவேறு கதைகள் நாவலை பற்றி, வண்ணாத்தியை பற்றி அவங்களுக்கு எவ்வளோ தெரியும். அந்த கதையின் வழியாக நீங்கள் ஒரு உலகத்தை புரிஞ்சுக்கிறீங்க. நீங்கள் கதையின் வழியாகவும் கண் வழியாகவும் ஒரு சமூகத்தை பார்க்க வேண்டியிருக்கு. ஒரு மொழிபெயர்ப்பாளருக்கு 2 வாய்ப்புகள் இருக்குது. அதனால் இரண்டையும் பார்த்தாங்கன்னா அவங்களுக்கு ஈஸியாக மொழிபெயர்க்கிறதுக்கு வாய்ப்பு அதிகம். நீங்கள் வெறும் டெக்ஸ்ட் வழியாக மட்டுமே ஒரு உலகத்தை பார்த்து, ஒரு சமூகத்தை பார்த்து, சமூக வாழ்க்கையை பார்த்து நீங்கள் மொழிபெயர்க்கிறதுல குறைபாடுகள் ஏற்படுவது இயற்கை. நான் என்னுடைய அனுபவத்தில் 80% சக்சீட் பண்ணிட்டாலே அவங்க நல்ல டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் அப்படிங்கிற அபிப்பிராயம் தான் எனக்கு இருக்குது. அப்புறம் அதுக்கு பின்னாடி ஒரு எடிட்டர்னு ஒரு ரோல் இருக்குது, எடிட்டருக்கு ஒரு ரோல் இருக்குது. இப்போ இருக்கிற டெல்லியில் இருக்க பல யங் கேர்ள்ஸ் வந்து எடிட்டராக இருக்கவங்க பூரா 25 வயசு 30 வயசுக்கு உட்பட்டவங்க. அவங்க என்ன பண்ணுறாங்கன்னா, அவங்களுக்கு என்ன இங்கிலீஷ் தெரியுமோ அதை பூரா மாற்றுறாங்க, சென்டென்ஸை அவங்க மாற்றிடுறாங்க. அவங்களுடைய புரிதல் என்னவோ, அந்த இங்கிலீஷ் டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் என்ன தப்பு பண்ணுறாங்களோ அதை கரெக்ட் பண்ண பார்க்குறாங்க. கதையில் என்ன அடிப்படையில் இருந்து அதில் என்ன கரெக்ட் பண்ணுறது அவங்களுக்கு தெரியல, அதுக்கு நேரமும் இல்லை. இப்போ மினி மாதிரியான ஒரு எடிட்டரை மாட்டுச்சுன்னு வச்சுங்க, டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டரும் சத்தான், ரைட்டரும் சத்தான். அவங்க பிரிட்டிஷ் இங்கிலீஷும் அமெரிக்கன் இங்கிலீஷும் அந்தமா எடிட் பண்ணுவாங்க. இங்கே டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் ஒருத்தங்க நான் அமெரிக்கன் இங்கிலீஷில் எழுதுறாங்கிறாங்க, ஒருத்தங்க இந்தியன் இங்கிலீஷில் எழுதணுங்கிறாங்க. அப்புறம் ரைட்டர்ஸ் நினைக்கிறான் இங்கிலீஷில் வந்துட்டாலே உலகளாவிய புகழ் கிடச்சுன்னு இவன் நினைக்கிறான். கரெக்டா? நான்லாம் ஒன்றும் அவசரம்லாம் வேண்டாம், அது இங்கிலீஷில் போய் ஒன்றும் ஆக போகிறதில்ல. எந்த லாங்குவேஜ்லேயும் போய் நிறைய நான் வந்து என்னுடைய பயோடேட்டாவில் வேணால் எழுதிக்கலாம் இந்தந்த லாங்குவேஜில் வந்திருக்குன்னு, அதுக்கு மேலே அதுக்கு ஒன்றும் பெரிய மீனிங் இருக்குதா எனக்கு தெரியல. இப்போ கோவேறு கதையில் நீங்கள் எவ்வளோ கொடுத்தாலுமே இங்கிலீஷ் ரீடர்ஸுக்கு அது கன்வே ஆகாது. செடல் நாவல் நீங்கள் எவ்வளோ தான் நல்ல உலகத்திலே சிறந்த மொழிபெயர்த்து கொடுத்தா கூட அவனால் அந்த ஸ்டோரியை உள்வாங்க முடியாது. இது ரீஜனல் ரைட்டிங்ஸ். இந்த லோக்கல் லைஃப் இந்த லோக்கல் மனிதர்களால் மட்டும்தான் அனுபவிக்க முடியும். அந்த இலக்கியத்தையும் சரி, அந்த மொழியும் சரி, அந்த வாழ்வியலையும் சரி, அந்த மனிதர்களால் தான் அறிய முடியும். அவங்க ஓரளவுக்கு கொஞ்சம் புரிஞ்சுக்கலாம். எனக்கு நான் பார்த்த அளவில் எங்கூட ஒர்க் பண்ண டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் கிருஷ்ணய்யர் வாரக்கணக்கில் உட்காந்து பேசியிருக்கோம். பல டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் பண்ணுறோம், அவங்களும் கற்றுறாங்க, நாங்களும் கற்றுறோம். இங்கே அவசரம் என்னென்னா, எழுத்தாளர்களுக்கு ஒரு அவசரம் இருக்குது. சீக்கிரம் இங்கிலீஷில் வந்துடணும். அது அவசியம் இல்லைங்கிறது என்னுடைய கருத்து. ஏதாவது ஒரு ஆளை பிடிச்சி ஏதாவது ஒரு இங்கிலீஷ் மொழிபெயர்த்து கொண்டாந்துருங்க அப்படின்னு நினைக்கிறாங்க. அப்புறம் இப்போ தமிழ்நாட்டில் ஒரு ட்ரெண்டு போகுது. சீக்கிரம் டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் ஆகிட்டா தமிழ்நாடு அரசாங்கம் ஒரு வீடு கொடுக்குது இலவசமாக. இப்போ எங்களுக்கெல்லாம் 1.5 கோடி கொடுத்துருக்காங்க, டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டருக்கு 40 லட்சத்தில் கொடுக்குறாங்க. அதுக்காகவே மொழிபெயர்க்கிறாங்க வேகமாக. கேரளாவில் ஜோசப்புடைய கவிதை எனக்கு தெரியும். வீடு இருக்கிறவர்கள் வீடுக்கு போகிறார்கள், வீடு இல்லாதவர்கள் எங்கே போவார்கள் அப்படின்னு ஒரு நல்ல பிரமாதமான அந்த கவிதையை நீங்கள் தமிழில் கேவி சைலஜான மொழிபெயர்த்துருக்காங்க. நாய் கூட வாய வைக்காது, அப்படி ஒரு மொழிபெயர்ப்பு. கேரளாவில் நான் ரொம்ப பிரமாதமான ரைட்டர்ஸை படிச்சுட்டே தான் இருக்கேன் அதிகமாக. ஆனால் இங்கே மொழிபெயர்ப்பு அப்படி இருக்குது. இந்த விருது வாங்கிறதுக்காக மொழிபெயர்க்கிறாங்க. நான் டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டரு, என் முன்னாடி டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டரு, என் புள்ள டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டரு, இப்படிலாம் இருக்காங்க. அரைக்குறை அவங்க அது கேரளா விட்டு வந்து 50 வருஷம் ஆச்சு, நடைமுறையே இல்லை. இப்படி இது ஒரு வியாபாரமாகவும் இருக்குது, அறிகுறியாக இருக்குது. அறிகுறின்னா உங்களுக்கு புரியுமான்னு தெரியல. ஏதோ பண்ணி ஒரு தற்காலிக புகழுக்காக எல்லோரும் அலைகிறாங்க. ரைட்டிங் வந்து தற்காலிகமானதா, இல்லை மொழிபெயர்ப்பு தற்காலிகமானதா? இன்னும் 100 வருஷம் கழிச்சு இந்த மொழிபெயர்ப்பு பார்த்தா வேற ஒருத்தர் ஒப்பீடு பார்த்தா அவங்க என்ன நினைப்பாங்க இந்த மொழிபெயர்ப்பு பற்றி? நம்முடைய புத்திசாலித்தை வெளிப்படுறதா, வாழ்க்கையை வெளிப்படுத்துறதா? நிறைய டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டர் தன்னுடைய இங்கிலீஷ் புத்திசாலித்தனத்தை காட்ட விரும்புகிறாங்க. நான் லைஃப்பை காட்ட விரும்புன்னு நினைக்கிறேன். ஆதர் எழுதினவர் ஆதரும் வெளியே போகிறான், டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டரும் வெளியே போகிறான், ரைட்டிங் மட்டும்தான் நிற்குது. ஸோ இந்த உணர்வு அவங்களுக்கு இருந்தால் போதும். ஸோ இப்படி தான் இருக்குது இந்த இண்டஸ்ட்ரி, வருத்தப்படலாம். நன்றி.
Sreedhara has been trying to say something. Sreedhara wanted to say something.
No, just now the discussion we'll have later on, but let's just finish this and I have to move on with her. Two more comments and then Professor Sreedhara, I say. We'll make the discussion later on. Yeah, please.
I'll quickly translate what was just said. One particular area Imayam focused on is there is only one illustrious dictionary available in Tamil, Kriya's dictionary. Imayam has worked with Kriya for publication of his stories. This is even before translation. Okay, even before the story goes to translation, it goes through editing from Kriya Ramakrishnan. And most editors use this Tamil dictionary, Kriya dictionary, and 70% of the examples given in this dictionary are Brahminical in nature. Because the compilers of the dictionary are familiar with that language. So whoever uses that dictionary naturally tends to go to those words, which ruins the original essence of the stories. So this is, and this also, when Kriya Ramakrishnan edits Imayam stories, he changes some words into wherever he doesn't understand the nuances of that word, he changes it to Brahminical language, to which Imayam has responded and made those edits. This is when such communication is possible. If it is not possible, when translators, one point he kept repeating is haste, translating in haste, this haste of publication, haste for reward. That is the truth today, that is how the industry is functioning. That is something he lamented. And there are some novels of his, Kover Kadhigal and Sedal, they just cannot be translated. They are not for translation, is what he says. So, the lived
Shuttle is being
experience
translated into Malayalam, between Tamil and Malayalam.
Tamil and Malayalam, I think.
Yeah, it's coming through TNTB. It is in the works.
Yes. So the lived experience can never be captured as vividly as in the originals. And he said, if a translation reaches even 80%, that's a huge success. It's a really good translation. One thing he wanted to clarify was, a translator cannot try to access the world through the text. That is impossible. So they have to put in more effort to go beyond the text in order to understand the world.
It's very
so
generous,
that they can
very generous of him.
இப்போ நான் வணக்கம்னு சொல்கிறாங்க, நான் சொல்கிறேன் நீங்கள் நமஸ்காரங்கிறீங்க, நான் பறவைன்னு சொல்கிறேன், நீங்கள் பக்ஷிங்கிறீங்க. நன்றி.
Thank you, Imayam. We have really, personally, I agree with you as a translator. You see, I have sat together with O.N.V. Kurup, Paul Zakaria, Anwar Ali, M. Mukundan. All these people I have translated, I have dedicatedly, we have taken time, gone through each word, revising, this kind of thing, consulting the author, so that you pointed out it's a very valuable kind of thing. But if the author has the time, the translator has all the time in the world, but the author has the time, that is another question. Another thing that he brought up is the editor, the presence of the editor. We were just saying the other day, no one is mentioning the name of the editor or the role of the editor. Here it is a little the other side of the editing part that he mentioned though, but editor, only in our regional languages, I think probably in English, everywhere I think in the world, beginning with Sartre, you must have heard of the story behind words. Sartre used to just sit in a closed room, leaving only a small hole for the coffee mug to be pushed in, and writing, he pushes the pages out, and the editor shapes the book, which we can't imagine happening in any of our regional languages. So our regional languages, most of the writers, they are like gods, so they don't want anyone to touch their work, sacrosanct. So this kind of idea even now, but sadly or otherwise, the English editor comes in at this. And he has rightly pointed out, there are some very fresh hands or very westernized or kind of Queen's English kind of people. They sit and correct. I have my experience also, I'm saying. The editor sitting there may not have the basic understanding of the cultural background or the local realities, and just impose the editing like that. You push, this is what, you either choose this or that. This kind of forceful kind of thing comes from the part of the editor. That is the flip side. But like Mini said, the book becomes possible only through an editor. The role of an editor, the contributing creative content of an editor is never acknowledged, The editor lives and dies silently. This kind of thing is there, which, you can have a very relevant role for the editor in the publishing industry or in the writer's writing realm. That is the minimum thing, and that I thank you for bringing up the term editing in between. So this, I'm also not taking much of time. There are many other things to be mentioned, like the points that you raised, about going into the minute details of the kind of community in which certain words are used. These are all details and very constructive ones at that, very the practical trade of a literary translator, the author pointing it out and the author volunteering to intervene in the translation and contribute. That's also a very positive outcome. So let me carry on with our discussion a little. Two more points about the caste again. You see about the privileged group of people or person trying to translate the fruits of one's labor from the oppressed side, the oppressed individual, oppressed community. So how fair it can be, that was one point that you raised. That's again happenstance. Again, it comes around the same way. Whoever is available to translate, whoever you can agree with for the translation, this kind of thing is there in any case, but that's what I believe. But the fairness is, it's glaring like that. And the other point that you made, that you must ask yourself whether I am suited this, I should do this, instead of grabbing whatever comes your way with the kind of hunger and urgency, whether you should pause and think, well, is it my cup of tea? That's also a very, very mature kind of approach, and thank you for that. So shall we move on to, because it came from, can we have the discussion after this, because we'll not lose the thread, because she was also talking about, I didn't know that she was going to talk about reviews, which Professor Sreedhara is going to speak about. I'll invite Professor Sreedhara now to speak next, and yeah, I'll just briefly introduce him. He taught English at Vijaya College, PG Studies Department, St. Joseph's College, and later Bangalore City University. Was involved in curriculum development and material production for undergraduate English courses. His research interests include post-colonial literatures, literary theory and translation, PhD on fiction as national narrative, a study of post-independence Indian novels across various languages. Worked as Deputy Director, Center for the Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Polity at National Law School of India University, and carried out research project for ICSSR called Struggling for Justice, Narratives of the Lives of Social Activists, Voices from South India, a series of interviews with grassroots level social activists from the South, coordinated Dr. Ambedkar for Youth Abhiyan, a campaign to take Ambedkar's thoughts to college students, covering more than 200 colleges all over Karnataka. Has involved in human rights work and environmental activism for the past 3 decades and taken part in several fact-finding missions both in Karnataka and outside. Was actively involved in Save Western Ghats and communal harmony programs. Has co-authored several fact-finding reports on atrocities against Dalit women and religious minorities. Has edited critical writings of well-known Kannada writer P. Lankesh, translated many works on human rights of noted activist K. Balagopal, and translated Eric Hobsbawm's Age of Extremes into Kannada. In the editorial team, which is bringing out Kannada translation of 5 volumes of critical writings on Ambedkar called B.R. Ambedkar, The Quest for Justice. He reviewed several translations from Kannada into English for their book review. Working as a coordinator for the Tamil Kannada translation project initiated by Tamil Nadu Textbook and Education Services, Government of Tamil Nadu, currently involved in developing a curriculum for the youth for constitutional awareness. So he is my brother coordinator, because I am the coordinator for Malayalam, he is the coordinator for Kannada in the TNTB project, Dishaduram Dravidam. And I read out all this, and I was just wondering whether I should abridge. There is nothing to abridge, because this is a vast area of activities that he is involved in, very relevant. So I read this all out. And now, Professor Sreedhara, please.
Thank you all. Let me go straight into this. But before that, yesterday, many translators mentioned that it came to translation by accident. But mine is a little different story. My translations are basically due to immediate need, some kind of exigency. We need to translate many articles immediately into Kannada because we want to orient our social activists to expose them, because most of them are not familiar with English. And most of our human rights reports are bilingual in nature. So we simultaneously bring Kannada and English versions. Only when the reports are huge, which involves a series of fact findings, as in Kashmir, we try to bring it out in the book form. But most of these reports are anonymous, in the sense we don't claim our authorship, because it's a collective work. Anyway, but getting back to this question, so when I was thinking about it, I was reminded of this very influential book when we were beginning to talk about post-colonial literature and post-colonial studies. There was this book called The Empire Writes Back. Everybody is familiar with that. In 1989 work by 3 editors, Bill Ashcraft, Helen Tiffin, etc. But very surprisingly, that book was basically about how the third world countries are now writing back to the empire. It's a pun on the word striking back, so they are writing back. But ironically or surprisingly, whatever you want to call it, that book has not a single reference to Indian writers in Indian languages. So the empire was written, according to them, was writing back only by English, writers, I mean Indian writers in English. Though by that time, by 1989, when the book was published, there were several translations available. So either they were not visible, or there may be 100 different reasons why they were not recognized. But there were very important developments, even way back in 1936, which saw, the 1936 is a very significant year because for the first time, the Dalit question came in the form of fictional narratives by non-Dalits. So we have Shivram Karan's Chomandodi, 1936. We have
also the Progressive Writers
Writers,
was in 36.
Premchand becoming the president of that in 1936. And again, Tekadi Shivshankar Pillai writing Scavenger's Son. And Malepalli, 1 or 2 years before in Telugu. And Chomandodi in Kannada. And above all, The Annihilation of Caste itself got published in 1936.
Yeah.
But these are all attempts at writing back in many ways, but this book did not or recognize it. But since then, translation has come a long way. So now there is no way one can ignore the translation. But this question that she raised about the empirical Shudra and theoretical Brahminhood, it continues. That equation still continues. Even Anantmurti wrote long back a long essay called English, Brahmana and Kannada Shudra. It's a very well-known essay. But this discrepancy, if you want to call it, doesn't get limited to only this. It's a part of a global hierarchy, I think, because it's as if that Indians are supplying the text and the Westerners giving the theory.
True.
So the question is now whether we can also produce our own literary theories. And in order to do that, I think translations play an important role. Because many Indian languages, like Kannada I'm familiar with, certainly we are familiar with other languages, have always negotiated with Sanskrit, a very pan-Indian, or what is called, Sheldon Pollock calls the cosmopolitan language. But Kannada, for example, continuously negotiated with the Sanskrit poetics. While Kannada took to one path while negotiating, Tamil took another path. Maybe different languages negotiated with this pan-Indian poetics, or the whole sense of creating literary canons in different ways. Now, there is no way we can, one easy way rather I would put, to create a plethora of different kinds of poetics emerging in different Indian languages can happen through translations. So I'll come back to that point a little later. But before that, I wanted to bring in one point. See, when I was doing research, this question that whether translated texts need to be taken as a text by itself, or should we always refer it back to the original, is a very fundamental question. There are no easy ways out of this, but still, when I was doing my research, which was basically about comparing different novels in different Indian languages, the only way I could do that was through translation. And then one justification that I gave myself and tried to convince the committee at that time was that that is how we read our European classics. So we had a full 100-mark paper on European classics. We read our German, Russian, and French writers through translation without bothering much about whether the translations were faithful or not, or whether there were multiple editions of translations. But whatever book we had in front of us, Dostoevsky's book, Crime and Punishment, was the text for us. So I think this same trend can continue, and I used it that way. that though while reviewing the translation, because we know both the languages, try to refer to the original, compare, which is also an important endeavor, task that cannot be wished away. But I think when it goes to the ultimate readers, the readers read only the translated work. For example, if I am given a work of translation, let's say that I have one Malas Kuvempu's book, I don't read it from page to page, because I already read that original, and I'm familiar with it, I'm more comfortable reading it in Kannada. I only read the translation for certain specific purposes, just to see how this chapter has come out, this paragraph has come out. Or if I'm studying that work for translation, my focus is on working on translations, then I will read that. Otherwise, I don't read that book page to page, just because I know the original. But if this book is from another language, I certainly read it without worrying too much about whether the translation has been faithful or not. So the reviews usually help me sometimes, telling that the translation has achieved this much or not achieved this much. And usually in such reviews, as somebody already pointed out, the note on how the translation has worked comes as a kind of footnote, as an appendage in the last. We always do that, pointing out to the adequacies or the inadequacies. For this problem, I faced this when I reviewed Kusumabale. Kusumabale, when it appeared in Kannada, one of the most frequently mentioned commentaries on that was that it should be first translated into Kannada, because that language was so unfamiliar to. Champa said that, and many also felt it, and many people felt it was difficult to follow the rhythm. So it was not simply because Devandur Mahadeva uses a particular dialect. There is something more than a dialect in that novel. Now, when that book was reviewed for Indian Review of Books, the book review, one of the comments I got much later was that I did not pay much attention to the act of translation, because translating a text like that is extremely challenging, and therefore how did the translator negotiate this challenge should have been given more importance than actual, or at least equal importance. So it had followed the same trajectory. Though I mentioned this point in the beginning of my review, I think I've mentioned a few lines about how difficult it is, but how the translator has managed, given certain examples. So therefore, this question remains that when we review the translation, what are we reviewing? Are we reviewing the original, or are we reviewing the translated work? It's a dilemma. It's like identity politics. We cannot completely wish it away, completely take it to the logical extreme. It makes it bizarre. So it's not even a question of finding a fine balance as a third alternative, but I think it is context-driven, ultimately. I agree with Imayam, when he mentioned that the question of identity becomes a question only when the translation ignores the context. And then all other questions start coming out. Who is this translator? From where does this person come from? But if the translation is adequate, then that question will not become so important. So similarly, therefore, whenever we review a translated work, maybe, I think this idea came up yesterday, a review by a translator who has no idea about the original language might also help. Yes. There can be a very useful comparison between the two. Because, for instance, when I read something from, say, Northeast, I'm interested to know how the Northeast, the experience of the Northeast is conveyed, and I'm not much worried about the translation. I may come across some inadequacies here and there. I may notice the awkwardness of construction of a sentence or cohesion problem, but I gloss over that because I'm very, very keen on getting to know the experience which I'm not familiar with. And therefore, the same thing perhaps happens whenever a translated work is read by a non-native speaker of that. So therefore, we don't have to be very apologetic about getting a book reviewed by a non-native speaker, as if the translated work is the text in front of us. It's like we read our Kafka's and Dostoevsky. So exactly. And therefore, I said that this is very context-driven in the sense that, for example, when a classic is translated, the bilingual edition that we see in Harishchandra Kavya or on Kumaravyasa, it helps. And there the translator's note becomes very, very important. And therefore, any review that we need to, any review that deals with such text will have to engage with the translator's note and not just give a footnote for the translator. That's very unfair, I think. And therefore, it's important that nowadays, that whenever we translate, there was a time when, as somebody mentioned here, the translator's name was also not mentioned, or except the name, we had no other idea. For example, Chomandudi was translated by Ahobal Shankara, right? Krishna Kulkarni, and we have no idea who he was. Or Ahobala Shankara also has translated. We had no idea who that person was. And in those days, because I faced this problem, that they would not give any, not even the date of translation. When was the translation published? Original, yes, we can find out. So, apart from all these biblio details, it's important that the translators really spend good time giving a note on the translation. Of course, we know the advantage of a native speaker translating a translated work. It has an advantage that such a reviewer can always locate it in a particular context. But that context, as I said, may not always be necessary. I mean, the knowledge of that context may not always be necessary for the reviewer, not for the translator. I'm saying that as a reviewer, we can always read a text as if it's original. But the importance of that is that if we want to get out of the point that I mentioned earlier, that we generate the texts and the West produces the theory. So this hierarchy between the empirical India and theoretical the West can be addressed by bringing out more translations, not only bringing out translations, but creating an atmosphere where we are able to compare the translations. As I've been mentioning that each language, community and culture has its own poetics. In other words, the way certain authors or texts, not authors, let's say, certain texts get canonized in a language may not function the same way in another language. The question then is why? For instance, Devendra Mahadeva is somebody who we revere a lot, and we also know what his writings did to our literary tradition, particularly the contribution to Dalit literature. And but I'm told that when his works were translated into Telugu, the impact was different. They may not look at him as important as we look upon him. It's not a question of just looking at the importance, but also trying to, because the reason is not because of the individual, but because the Telugu writing will have its own literary history, which might find the incursion of a translated work difficult to accommodate or problematic to accommodate. And therefore, I think what is important here is for the translation and for the review is to go beyond just reviewing a text and also to see whether a community is of researchers, thinkers possible, where we compare how the poetics of each language community works and what's the difference and how the negotiations happen. So maybe
One
that
minute.
will lead to one sentence. That will lead to, because the nation India itself is a nation which is stitched together with so many cultures, languages, and therefore the translations can also be a part of this pastiche and can perhaps address this larger question of creating our own theory and not depending on the West to theorize upon us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sreedhara. Two things that he mentioned about Kusuma Bala's translation, it could be a patois of the particular communities. In Malayalam, we have, the fisherman, there's an important poet called D. Anil Kumar, writing in the fisherman's patois. He has prepared a kind of a key to the language and published it along with that. And it is practically translating that into Malayalam. Also, there are tribal languages, 3-4 tribal languages in Malayalam, in Kerala, which, they're important poets. So they are translated by P. Raman. P. Raman is a prominent poet.
One is familiar with that.
Yeah, who is familiar with that. He translates that. So this is something that happens naturally here, but, this is something that you took up and especially mentioned. So was there a controversy or something like that about
Not a
this?
controversy, but it was a passing remark that.
Okay, remark. Okay.
Particularly when you review a book like that, the translation should be given more importance.
All right. And the other observation that you had about checking keeping the fidelity with the original, and that is not possible, you see, in the case of you citing that about Russian classics or French classics that came to us in English translation. How could we check the original? So you accept that as a text that is a given text, and so these are not kind of unbendable rules like that. These are suggestions, I think, whatever applies when. And again, you also said if the translator ignores or doesn't pay attention to the background or the culture of the original writers, so then that is to be called out. Yeah. So with this, I think we will move on to the next speaker. Jayarinivasa Rao is a researcher and translator who translates poetry and prose across Kannada and English. His book of Kannada translations is 70 Polish poems. Sreedhara, Galu, I don't know whether the pronunciation is right. And another book of Kannada translations of 130 poems by 21 poets from Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania, titled Baltic Kadalagali, published by Bandara Prakashana, was released in May this year. His Kannada translation of Anna Akhmatova's Requiem and books on poems from Bulgaria and Sweden are in the works. He has also translated into English an early Kannada social novel, Chandramukhiya Gatavu, and poems, stories, and essays for the acclaimed anthology Steel Nibs Sprouting, New Dalit Writing from South India, HarperCollins. His English translations of Kannada modernist poet K.V. Tirumalesh's Hyderabad poems have appeared in Shishure, Poetics of Cultural Translation, Muse India, Maidanam, and recently in the Penguin Book of Poems on the Indian City. And his Kannada translations of world poetry have appeared in mainstream Kannada literary journals like Aazhi, Kanda Sambige, Bhasha Bharati, Rutumana, Akshara Sangada, and Michuli. His English translations of Kannada short stories and essays have been published in various anthologies. For the past 2 years, he has been writing a fortnightly column called Loka Kavya Vihara for the permanent online Kannada literary magazine Kanda Sambige, where he introduces a foreign poet along with Kannada translations of the poems. He has introduced and translated poems of 52 foreign poets in this column till date. Jayarinivasa also translates Hindi poetry to Kannada, and his Hindi poetry translations are being published in a fortnightly column in Aazhi Mag, a well-known online Kannada literary cultural magazine. He received his doctoral degree from the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad, for his work on translation and the early novel in Kannada. His research papers on translation and Kannada, Arunodaya literature, can be seen and read in various academic journals like Translation Today, Journal of Karnataka Studies, CFIL Bulletin, Purna Drishti, Journal of Literary Studies and Languages in India. His fortnightly column, Forgotten Chapters on Kannada, Arunodaya literature, appeared in the Hindu during January-December 2020. Jayarinivasa lives in Hyderabad and has 20 years' experience in teaching English and communication skills to engineering undergraduates. Professor Sreedhara.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor to be here amongst all of you. My talk is basic bread and butter kind of a talk. As Thomas sir said, I translate across Kannada and English, but as I have this small little thing, from Kannada to English, I translate all genres, poetry, prose, but from English to Kannada, I translate only poetry. That's how it is. So I've tried, I managed one short story recently with great difficulty. So it's this process, yes. Anyway, during the last 5 years, I have mostly translated poetry. Though I have translated poems of quite a few Kannada poets into English, my primary project, so to say, was translating eminent Kannada poet K.V. Tirumalesh's Hyderabad poems into English. Tirumalesh's Hyderabad poems can be found in his collections Mukhamukhi 1978, Avadha 1986, and a number of Hyderabad fragments are also embedded in his epic style Akshaya Kavya 2010 and Avyaya Kavya 2019. I have thus mined around 40 Hyderabad poems from these 4 books. So there is no Hyderabad poems anthology as such. So I have selected these. Professor Tirumalesh was a professor at English and Foreign Languages University right from the early 70s. So he's lived all his creative life in Hyderabad. So Hyderabad is very close to him. I have been living in Hyderabad for the past 30 years. So I was his student, PhD student for a brief period. Not that we were very close. I used to be very scared of him. It's only after I finished my PhD and all these things that I approached him. We fought and then we made up, and all these kinds of things happened in between. And then I asked him if I can, if I could translate his poems. He very magnanimously said that once I write a poem and it's published, anybody can do anything with it. So I proceeded. So I was fascinated by his Hyderabad poems, which appeared in Mukhamukhi first. I read them first and then in Avadha. So I started translating them. And then when these 2 books came out, Akshaya Kavya and Avyaya Kavya, I started searching for Hyderabad fragments in them, and I found quite a lot. Anyway, so I wish to focus on one of the interesting challenges that I faced while translating these poems into English. Tirumalesh's reading was vast, comprising literature, Kannada, English, world literature in translation, philosophy, linguistics, culture, politics, it goes on. And he would bring in all these into his poetry, especially philosophy and literature. In many cases, most notably in the Hyderabad fragments in Akshaya Kavya and Avyaya Kavya, he would refer to philosophers and writers directly. In a fragment from Akshaya Kavya, which I have titled as, fragments have no titles, this just goes on and on. When you have nothing, measure shadows. This is the title I gave to one of the fragments. He refers to Plato's allegory of the cave. Plato is mentioned as just the Athenian, and his name comes only in the end. So this is my English translation. It begins like this. When you have nothing, measure shadows, said the Athenian. They are manifestations of truth. That's why shadow plays are important, he said. At an arm-reaching height, if there is a window, it's enough. If it has bars, let them be. There is but one home for light. And it ends this way. When you bang your head against the wall, your head cracks, not the wall. Nothing is a metaphor here. Real blood, real stain. I think what he wants is a photo of his wife and his children. All these were not there in Plato's time. So I didn't know about this, where this reference to this. I got curious. I figured this out through some serious Google research and found out that it is from, Plato's, this is a reference to Plato's allegory of the cave. So then I read this whole thing, Plato's allegory of the cave, and was able to look at it from a different perspective and also appreciate it better. So this is another fragment, again from Akshaya Kavya. This is called At Kachiguda Railway Station. Those who come to Hyderabad frequently, they would know Kachiguda Railway Station. It begins this way. At Kachiguda Railway Station, all were there and none were there. I looked around, no familiar faces. All travelers were new. Yet the expressions on their faces were not new, I felt. And the poem moves on and unexpectedly refers to Astapovo. After the train leaves the station, nothing seems as barren as the rails. Astapovo, have we reached Astapovo? I continue to ask everybody. Though the train has left Kachiguda, it hasn't left Kachiguda. I was in a hurry to get off, even before we started off. I never knew if it was before or after Astapovo. I had no idea what Astapovo was. Was it a person, a place? I searched and I discovered that Astapovo was the lonely railway station where Tolstoy lay dying in the freezing Russian autumn and breathed his last. That's the reference. So it's just Astapovo written there. There is no mention of Tolstoy anywhere in the fragment. There is a long story of, this Astapovo episode, if you search on the net, you'll find quite a long story. There is a long story to Tolstoy's last days, how and why he escaped from his home and wife and children and got onto a train with no destination in mind, fell seriously ill and died at Astapovo railway station. Getting to know this again gave me a fresh perspective to the poem. This is a thing which I had written, but I had erased it, but I think I'll go ahead with it. And from Avyaya Kavya, we have the remarkable fragment called Sunday Market, which has a profusion of images, sounds, smells, and references. It begins rhythmically and moves on to describe the market. Sunday market, Monday market, Tuesday market. Each day is a different market. What we have is Sunday market. Every Sunday it rises up like magic, out of nothing really, on both sides of the wide road opposite Gokul Mart. Gokul Mart is mall kind of supermarket kind of thing in Sitafal Mandi, which is very close to Seaful. We all know that. I know that, he knows that. Its excitement is infectious. Those who go there once go there every week. Some are covered, some are bare, some on the ground, some on pushcarts, and some more on their imitations. Like Plato said, no pushcart is real. The pushcart of truth is not here, on the earth and on the sky, and everything here are imitations. Among them, us too. What's real, what's an imitation, why did we come here, I don't remember. We wander around or stand around. These busy ladies are perhaps Rambas, Urvashis, and Tilottamas, celestial maidens in disguise. Have come here tired of heaven or cursed by someone. This is a goblin market. Thirumalesh, out of the blue, refers to Christina Rossetti's poem Goblin Market here. And then the vegetables and fruit come in, named in Kannada, English, and Telugu. We haggle, we appeal, we cajole a bit. We remember the farmer who is not here. Potato, tomato, irulli, bellulli, hagalakai, padavalakai, tender sautekai. The gummadikaya that reminds you of the thief of yore, kumbalakai, watermelon, pineapple, and papaya. Now, look at what he does here. He uses potato and tomato as English words to create rhyme and rhythm. Originally in Kannada, he writes this. Whereas potato has a Kannada counterpart, tomato doesn't. Tomato is tomato in Kannada, pronounced differently. But for onion and garlic, he uses their Kannada counterparts, irulli, bellulli, to create rhythm. I decided to use translator's license and have retained the Kannada words for onion and garlic in my English translation to retain the rhythm. And all other names of vegetables end in kai, again creating rhythm. Bitter gourd and snake gourd rhyme, but cucumber doesn't rhyme with them. And out of the blue, he mentions pumpkin, white pumpkin, using its Telugu name, Gummadikaya. Vegetables in Telugu end in Kaya. And references a popular proverb in Kannada and Telugu, which loosely reads, when somebody said pumpkin thief, he checked his shoulder. He then mentions the Kannada term for pumpkin so that the proverb is understood by Kannada readers. And it looks like the poet is doing all this to lighten the mood before the final two stanzas, where the poem is taken to another level. I have not mentioned that final paragraph here. In all these examples, we have names of references, and if we are so inclined, we could look them up. But what about a poem like this? This is a short poem from inside Salarjung Museum. This is from Mukhamuki, 1978. This is something which fascinated me no end. For our ancestors, things were not just objects, they were things. For example, the mirror was not just something to see one's face in, it needed a large frame, a number of creepers on the frame, lots of flowers on the creepers. We need only the mirror. The frame is only to hold it. Similarly, God, a temple for God, a tower for the temple, idols, anklets for the feet, bells for the anklets, not for making sound. We too need God, and for that, a temple. Hidden inside this poem is a reference to Heidegger's concept of the distinction between objects and things. I didn't know about the Heidegger connection until my friend Kamalakar pointed it out to me. With this knowledge, the poem shows you a different face. Even without that knowledge, this poem is a wonderful example of a Tirumalesian poem with a kick at the end or a twist in the tail. These are just 3 examples, and there are many such references throughout his poems. Tirumalesh wrote these poems and many more with all these references to people, poems, places, etc., without any explanation. He just went on writing like a river that flows on, taking whatever comes in its path. He left it to the reader. When I translated these poems into English, my challenge was, I searched and now know what Astapava is, or what Plato's allegory of the cave is, or what Heidegger's concept of objects and things is. Should I give a footnote to these references so that readers can understand the poem better, or should I leave it, just like Tirumalesh did, to the readers to find out if they want? Some of these poems have been published and are available in the public domain, and I haven't given any footnotes or glosses to any of these. The only time I felt I should clarify a word was when 2 poems were published in the Penguin Book of Poems on the Indian City, edited by Bilal Moin. And one of them, from Avyaya Kavya, was about a Muslim street vendor who sells an assortment of things, rat poison and other pesticides. Tirumalesh refers to him as Keetanashaka Sabi. And I translated Keetanashaka as pesticide and retained the word Sabi, and supplied a footnote explaining the word, saying, the word Sabi here is a sort of shorthand reference term for any Muslim man in most parts of Karnataka, coming from Saheba, which comes from Sahab or Saab, which gets further garbled into Saba or Sabi. Though not exactly derogatory, rising temperatures in certain tense situations has the potential to turn this word into an abuse or a slur. This is the footnote that I gave. If I get a publisher and get a chance to bring Tirumalesh's Hyderabad poems together into a book, I might be tempted to add footnotes, just a line each to these references. But again, I also feel it would be out of line with Tirumalesh's vision and how he wanted his poems to be received and read. Or follow Deepa Bhasthi, as she says at the end of Heart Lamp, no italics, no footnotes. So I, leave it at that. There's a part 2, this is the other way around. I've also been translating poems of poets from across the world into Kannada, some of them directly from English, and most of them through their English translations. This has resulted in a series in Kenda Sampige, which is called Lokakavya Viharas, 52 poets, and 2 books. This is the book of poems translated from Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania into Kannada. This is called Baltic Kadala Gali. So this have resulted from these translations. A book on Polish translations into Kannada. Here, this is a few things. Here I'll be looking at some of the challenges and so on. The first poem that I translated into Kannada was Seamus Heaney's Digging. The poet, from his upper floor window, sees and describes his father harvesting potatoes and reminisces about his grandfather, who was also a potato farmer. While we grow potatoes abundantly in India, for us farmers have always been grain farmers. The entire experience is different with potato farming. It was while translating this poem that I realized I had to stick close to the original if I had to capture the sights and sounds and experiences faithfully. I continued this method of translation for quite a number of poems. It was something like, if it is a Bulgarian poem or an Estonian poem, it must feel like one in Kannada too. I didn't want to naturalize or domesticate them into Kannada poems. I retained the names of trees, birds, animals, etc. as they were in the original, unless a name was available in Kannada. I would add mara, that is tree, or huvu, flower, or hakki, bird, next to the names and make it clear that it was a tree or a bird or a flower, like oak mara, chestnut mara, cherry mara, pine mara, or camellia huvu, lily hoogalu, peony huvu, chamomile hoo, or oriole hakki, eider hakki, nightingale hakki, red-wing hakki. Similarly with names of rivers, cities, and mountains, etc. While I retained all the local elements to make the poem rooted in the land and the landscape, I was also conscious of the fact that I can't retain the names of everything, and for such names or phrases, I created or fused words to form new words. I especially ran into problems when it came to descriptions of winter and winter-related things. We have hima for snow, and we say himagadde for ice. But while speaking, we use the word ice itself. We don't say one the cube hima kodi or something like that. You know, we say ice.
You have 2 minutes more.
Yeah, I'll just finish this part. But with words like snowflake or icicle or snowball, I improvised and created compound words like himakolu. For icicle, I made it himakolu or himasaralu. For snowflake, I got this, I created this thing called himasuma. Suma is flower, himasuma. Then for snowball, I got himachendu. Then there were unique phrases for which I had to create phrases in Kannada. I just want to put out one slide. Excuse me there, yeah, just that slide. I just wanted to show this. Yeah, this is a poem just called O. Yeah?
Plus below you get
Yeah, plus. Okay, yeah, you can scroll it down. It's a very interesting poem. I fell in love with it and I wanted to translate it, though it was a problematic thing. Okay, the O, you can see this is English, this is Kannada. In the Kannada, also I've retained the title as O, but in brackets, there is this Kannada letter for O. I couldn't have used that in Kannada. If you can see that, I've retained a lot of English words. Optimism grows from day to one. So the O is not just a letter, it's also not something that you read, it's also something that you see. So the entire description is, from day to day, its O inflates. Optimism grows from day to day. So the entire focus is on the letter O as a letter as well as a visual kind of thing. It's like an O, zero kind of thing. So it's like an O which grows. So I couldn't have used the Kannada letter O for this. So what I did was, I retained English O for everything. Throughout the poem, you speak through the O. This O is the mouth. You spy through the O. This O is the eye. You listen in through the O. This O is the ear. So everything is, you've satisfied the intimate needs of the O. Falling asleep with the fat O in your mouth, you awake with an even fatter one. It's beyond belief. You awake with a letter, a number, a vowel in your mouth with a burgeoning O. So I had no other option. I wanted to translate it at any cost. So I did it. I couldn't have used the Kannada O bit. It didn't make sense in the Kannada translation. So I retained it. And I thought I'd leave it to the reader to whatever they can find. But I think they would figure it out ultimately. That's what. Thank you so much.
And there is an announcement that at sharp 1:30 we will go for lunch because it's getting cold and the weather is chilly, and anyone who wants to leave early, to catch their flights or trains also are free to do leave during the discussion, because at sharp 1:30 we will close the program. That's what I've
I
supposed.
was saying that we could carry on a little longer if somebody
Yeah,
wants to go. And
yeah. At one, yeah, one, but
we don't have to 140 also.
yeah, it can be 140 also. Yeah, all right.
Because we want to give
Yeah,
time to
yeah. Okay, thank you. About this, we will begin with this kind of, like the graphic way you retain the structure of the poem, the visible structure. Yeah, that the experiment that you did with the non-existent O in Kannada. So this is the kind of extreme challenge that we come across in this thing, and it is a commendable kind of exposure. You're translating from so many foreign languages into Kannada. I don't know the kind of reception that the Kannada readers give to such poetry. Are they well received?
Yeah, the reception, I translate these poems and then I post it on Facebook.
Okay.
So I get, instant. I didn't have to wait for the book to be published.
Yeah.
The publishing of the book was, I just wanted a book sort of thing, so I got it published. And a publisher was generous enough to, get it published and all the thing. But the poems were well received.
Okay. In Malayalam, Professor K. Sachidanandan began doing this in the late 60s. And the Malayalam poetic expression developed through such translations. And it's very...
Some of the poets, some of the readers, some of them who write poetry, they have kind of told me that you have opened up a different way of looking at poetry by bringing these poems from all these different countries, the landscape, and the way they construct some of the poems that they construct, that kind of thing. So it was... I have to say it was warmly received, and then the book was published the beginning of this year.
Okay.
And many of them felt that though they have read most of the poems online, they wanted to have a book, and they went on to purchase the book also. So quite pleased about this whole experience.
Yeah. Thank you. We will move on to Deepa Bhasthi. Deepa Bhasthi is a writer and International Booker Prize winning literary translator working in Kannada and English. Her cultural criticism, essays, columns, and journalism have been published extensively in Indian and international publications, anthologies, and art book projects. She is the author of a children's book, Champi and the Fig Tree, in Kannada and English. Her published translations from Kannada include works by Kota Shivaramakkarand, Kodagina Gauramma, and Banu Mushtaq. She is also the recipient of an English Pen Award for the latter, a collection of short stories titled Heart Lamp Selected Stories. That's the award-winning one. Deepa lives and works in Kodagu in southern India. Deepa, when we are all eager to, this is just out of syllabus, but this is something that we are all eager to know. I was asking you in our conversation during breakfast. You see, in London in 1997 July, Arundhati Roy, she was mobbed. I was there. I happened to be there. I could not see her even in their house. So, what was your experience going there to receive the award, and how was the kind of reception that the literate audience gave you? Your first-hand experience. Can you? That is the first part. The second part, your engagement with children's literature, translation of it.
Great.
Please.
Thank you, Dr. Thomason. Thank you so much for having me here. I just have to add a disclaimer. One is that this is quite an intimidating room full of scholars and professors who have taught language and translation for many, many years. I have neither studied languages or translations, or I don't have any academic background. So anything that I have to say comes from a very non-theoretical background, only from, probably out of my own reading or practice. There's nothing much I can ascribe to a theoretical understanding of either language, linguistics, or
the practice of translations. And I also have to, a large part of why I'm here today kind of goes back to Ms. Mini Krishnan, because I got in touch with her way before, long back, before I had published my translation of Kodagina Gaurama. So thank you so much again. She had so many words of advice, and very thankful for her help. Before I had some responses to the other questions that were being discussed today. But being in London for the International Booker Prize was, obviously it was an incredible experience. I mean, there's no denying that. It was a very strange process, because I knew that the book was being entered for the International Booker. We are told that by the publishers. And in case someone here doesn't know, to be eligible for either the Booker or the International Booker, the book has to be published in either the UK or Ireland. Only then it becomes eligible for either of these prizes. And of course, the Booker is for literature originally written in English, whereas the International Booker is for translations from any language into English. So we were told that the book is being, and beyond that, it's beyond our control. I mean, there's nothing that either I as a translator or Banu as the author can do about pushing the book or not. So there's been a lot of, there was a lot of discussion, even within Karnataka, from various quarters, about us trying to lobby for it. I wish that was that easy to do, but I think it was very interesting being there, mainly because it's not often that South Indian languages get the kind of attention that something like the Booker Prize can bring. So Arundhati Roy won it in 1997. So, and then this is 28 years later, and that's a very long time. And obviously, I think we all here would understand that it is nothing to do with the fact that we haven't had extraordinary literature, either in English or translated from Indian languages to English in these 28 years.
From Adiga is a Kannada thing. Aravind Adiga won this, no?
Yes, of course. I think he's of Karnataka origin.
Yeah, he is.
So there have been, obviously, but this is the first, I'm sorry, this is the second Indian translation from an Indian language.
Exactly. From the south, yeah.
Yes, that's second. The second book from an Indian language, and the first time that this has come to an Indian translator.
The Hindi Gitanjali Sri, and then you.
And Daisy Rockwell, yes, of course. So it's been, the reception was, it's been very mixed, I would say, from readers there as well, because there's been a lot of discussion about my choices about not putting in italics or not giving footnotes. So it's had mixed reviews, interestingly, from Indian readers, not so much from readers in the UK. Because I think there has, I don't know whether it's the Booker effect or generally that they are more receptive to being challenged in their reading habits. But there's been a lot of interest in these, in being challenged. Whereas I've had a lot of readers come up to me within India and said that I should have given footnotes, that they didn't understand it, that certain words were not Googleable, so which is why they didn't relate to the text, which I'm fine with. It's a very personal reading experience, of course. But for me, what was important was to challenge the idea that that there were only a few ways in which any text from Indian languages could be translated into English, which is why I was very clear that even within the stories from excuse me, Banu's collection of her entire work. So Heartland didn't exist in Kannada as this particular collection. So the stories were selected from 6 different short story collections and made into Heartlamp. Now it's in Kannada, of course. So it's very clear that I wanted to locate the English I translated into in a particular region, because everyone here, you would speak very different English in Kerala or in Tamil Nadu or in Delhi or wherever. So the English that I translated into is probably what we speak in Bangalore or in parts of southern Karnataka, not even North Karnataka, because the North Karnataka linguistic, cultural landscape is extremely different, and I don't have a good understanding of this particular linguistic culture either. So for me, so this went into some of these choices. For example, in southern India, we don't say roti as much as we say roti. It's akki roti or ragi roti or any of these things. And I was not in I'm still not in favor of homogenizing or making these translations as a pan-Indian idea. Like sari is, for us, it's in Kannada it is sire, it is not sari. Or roti is roti here. Or dhoti, again, this is the South Karnataka context that I'm talking about. It's usually lungi or panche. And dhoti is a very different, it's not used.
It's a double fold.
It is. Of course, the North Karnataka, there are parts of North Karnataka where they do say dhoti, but this, I had to look at also the context. So I think these things
Malayalam is a mundu. So
mundu, yes, mundu and lungi, of course. For us, it's dosa, dose, and vada, vade. It's, so those things I think were very important for me to retain. And that, I hope, of course, I even when I say I'm not a big fan of italics or footnotes, I very well understand that it is not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. I'm very sure there are texts which absolutely require italics and footnotes. But I truly believe that if it is possible to get away without employing either of these, then we should, that should be the first choice of the translator, mainly because, I mean, I explained this in the translator's note, there is it makes for a seamless reading experience is one, if it is achievable. Again, this is completely depends on the context. So I think these choices were what made the translation interesting, and that's what a lot of readers that I spoke with, elsewhere, and what really was very gratifying was these were mostly students, these were mostly readers in their 20s or late teens, who would come up to me and said, we didn't realize we could also write in English like this, which was very, it was very reassuring and also nice, because like everyone, we all read a certain English when it comes from elsewhere. It's all sort of homogenized. Although I have to, remind ourselves that these conversations have been happening in African literature for a very, very long time. Right from Gugi to Chinua Achebe, Wole Soyinka, and all those. Yes, so it's probably not as well employed in Indian translations as it could have been. So I think those things are very reassuring to hear. And secondly, you asked about children's literature. So it just so happened, I don't typically write for, I mean, now I'm interested, of course. But Pratham Books asked me to send in something and really kind of handheld me through the entire process. And I found it very interesting when Professor Bharati talked about, some things when you translate from English to Tamil, it is only poetry. Or yes, or and it's the other way, prose for everything else. For me, I realized that when I was trying to write a children's book, it happened only in Kannada. Somehow I just could not think of it in English, even though everything else I write is in English. English is unfortunately the language of my mind. But somehow, and maybe it's because I grew up on stories. My grandmother, I would make her tell me 3 or 4 stories every single day. So maybe it went back to that. I don't know why it happened. But so that was a very interesting experience for me. And also I think the reason why I would want to write more, because for me, when I try to write something, it first comes in English, unfortunately. And translation is one of the ways in which I have a deeper connection with Kannada, and I begin to articulate my thoughts in Kannada when I translate a lot more, and interestingly with children's books as well. So that's been an interesting experience. Sorry, if I just had some...
one more minute.
1 more minute. Okay, then that's
Maybe
fine.
2 minutes.
No, that's fine, that's fine. I'm happy to be asked questions or anything if...
Yeah,
someone
after that
has.
we'll come to that.
Sure.
Yeah. No, but we can take
No,
you
no,
2
that's-
minutes. No,
that's
that's
fine.
fine.
That's fine.
So
Thank you.
thank you very much. And before that, before I forget, I forgot the session before that. You see, when I made that comment about eschewing footnotes and gloss and all that, I was specifically meaning fiction, not even poetry, fiction, for the trade publishing fiction nowadays. And personally, for my pen presence, I left out all kind of such things, and I was told not to. So this kind of thing, for the other kind of writing you need to, because if you're translating classics, if you're translating academic books, for all other translation where you need footnotes, you need glossary, please forgive me if I gave a wrong impression, because 3 people were coming out with the necessity of footnotes, and I was feeling a kind of compunction not to speak before that, but I forgot to mention earlier when you finished. I wanted
Sorry,
to.
if
So
I can just add that, I wonder if writing a really extensive translator's note is one way of doing away with
that is also there, yeah.
the
Yeah.
burden of having to give
That's,
footnotes
yeah.
as well. So I think that's,
Yeah.
translator's notes are fascinating, which is, I think at some
But
point
when
we
you
should have a
make
collection
submissions
of...
like pen presence, you can't do that also. You have
No,
the
no,
number of words and all
that's
that.
true,
Yeah,
that's
the
true.
thing.
Like I said, no, I mean, doesn't fit, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of a thing, but when
that's-
we work on a book,
yeah.
maybe that's one of the ways of getting around.
Yeah.
this.
So,
Sorry.
yeah, sorry.
The question that I raised in my opening remarks, if you could briefly tell us your views about it. No, that's it. I've asked her. She knows.
Yeah. No, I mean, to be honest, I don't see this question of the invisibility of the translator is something that I completely disagree with, especially now, because I think we all understand here, those of us who work with language, that we as translators bring so much into the text. And if these very same stories were Banu's stories were translated by somebody else, it would read completely different, as it should, of course. So how is it not a creative practice when this is the case? We bring our reading habits, we bring our life experiences, limited or whatever they may be, and we bring our understanding of the language, so most importantly. So when so much of us is in the translation, this idea that we are also not we are not, this is not a creative expression, act of creative expression is not something I can wrap my head around. And so which is why I think that it almost, the book that we translate almost becomes something like a third text. It's not exclusively, sure, the stories are from, were written in the original language by an author, and it was translated, all that apart. But what is created and published as a translation also becomes so much of this third thing where there is so much of the author, there is so much of the translator as well. Obviously, this is not to say that the author is not important or the translator. It's not. It's just an equal partnership.
It's a recreation, maybe.
It's a recreation, it's a transcreation, and I can only speak in the Kannada context. We've had at least 1,000 years of history in this act of transcreation.
In Malayalam also we have.
I'm sure in many, many Indian languages we have that, and it's never.
There was no author at the time.
It was, yeah. So when that is the case, this idea that somehow the translation, the translator is not important or does not deserve equal credit or does not deserve to be seen as the writer of a text also is, I don't know. I mean, it baffles me.
I used to, in certain, I used to describe it as a kind of landlord tenant kind of relationship.
That's a very great, yeah.
I used to do that. So in Malayalam, I don't want to name people, but in Malayalam there were certain authors who took their translators along, this thing, and say proudly, so this is my translator, and he would see like this, stand like that, literally. It's about 10, 15 years ago. So this is also there, that's why. So
Deepa, because I think it's a, sorry.
At the Book Brahma festival, I remember Banu sort of making a case.
Excuse me, I have promised Dr. Sreedhara that I will be giving because he has been waiting patiently for this thing. After that, you can come on, please.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, please. Yeah, that's fine.
The
no
mic
problem.
is not on.
Why don't you sit down there and speak?
Yeah.
Why don't you sit there?
You can sit there and take the.
I might. I might take just a little time because I was telling Vanamala that yesterday, she and all of us thought that the session was to end at 6 o'clock. And this session was actually to end up at 6:30. I want to have my say. Yeah, so please be patient. Now, I think let me first say that I've learnt a lot from this session about translating different genres and also about how to review, how not to review, etc. Just a personal thing that I held one of the first, perhaps, seminars on how not to review translated books years ago in the University of Hyderabad. Mini was one of the persons who came at that time. Meenakshi Mukherjee was there, and several other scholars and translators. Shubhashri was there. Yeah. So I think there is a difference that we have to recognize between a review and a critical essay. I think sometimes we miss the distinction between the two. Our expectations of a review should be based on how we understand the difference between these two categories. I mean, if we think that there is no difference between these categories, then it's a different matter altogether. Then
the book review also, we call it a review article,
Yeah, but very often we don't maintain the distinction. So perhaps there is a gap between the expectations of the translators from a review and what the reviewers think is their responsibility while reviewing books in general and books which are translations. So that's the other point that I wanted to bring. The third point about the review. Now, where the knowledge of the source matters in a review, to go back to one of the points that Arasi was making. Now, the translators and editors, and with due respect to both sets of people here, we have the habit of editing out portions of the source text which we think are irrelevant. Now, it would then be the responsibility of the reviewer to expose this. Because, we have been told by some, there are some translators who think that the last para of the original text is irrelevant. So just leave it out of the translation. And the writer accepts it because it is going into English. And the power of English, Imayam talked about it, the rush to want to get published in English, all of those things. Therefore, sometimes the writers have really no say when, we have had an experience of bringing out 2 volumes of Indian literature, at which point Professor Velcher Narayan Rao, a very respected translator, he had translated a Dalit writer called Satish Chandar, who published a poem called Panchama Vedam. Now, in his wisdom, he felt that certain portions of the text could be edited out of the source text. Since Uma and I were editing this book, the 2 journals of this issue, we brought it to the notice of both the translator and that is Velcher Narayan Rao, and also the writer. Now, Professor Velcher Narayan Rao have, a very respectable name in translation. He said that he had his own reasons for editing out portions of the text, and Satish Chandar was very happy to allow this translation to go. Now, where do we, as the editors, figure? The translator is happy, the writer is happy to edit out portions of the text, and we felt that the portions that have been edited out are the most important for.
Was I the one? Am I the?
No, you wouldn't know unless you were.
Did you tell me? Was I the editor at that time? Maybe someone else. I don't remember.
Yeah, you know. I think you were the assistant.
Yeah, I should have been
editor,
assistant.
and Professor Sachidanandan was there.
No. I haven't worked with Sachidanand as assistant. Either Shiv Prakash or Nirmal Kanti Bhattacharya.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I don't matter, but the fact is that. So where do we go? So here I go back to one of the points that you raised about. I think the knowledge of a review, at least according to me, I don't know whether and Uma will agree, because some of the things that I'm saying is something that both of us have thought about over all these years. I think a review of a translation must be done by a person who knows the original, precisely for this kind of a reason. What happens when important portions of a text are completely taken out of a translation for various reasons, exigencies of space, whatever it is. So those are the points about reviewing. Now I come to the responsibilities of a translator. Now, with due respect to those who have been accidental translators, so many people have come up with that expression yesterday, that's why I used the word accidental translators. Can we remain so, even if we are to meaningfully contribute to the literature we seek to serve? And I believe that as translators...
You mentioned that, we began as accidental translators.
That's why this...
only
that
beginning.
is why.
Once
I'm
after
aware
that, we are full-fledged.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. That's why I said, can we remain so if we are to meaningfully contribute to the literature we seek to serve? And I believe that as translators, we have to believe that we are serving the cause of the literature that we wish to promote. Now, one must become conscious translators if we are to make a difference to the impact. Yesterday, somebody talked about the impact of the source language on other literatures. Professor Sreedhara talked about it, for example, a little while ago. So if we want to do that, we have to become conscious translators over the years. Then, expectations of writers especially of those who want their works to be translated into English, of which Professor Imayam talked about. Now, they don't think about who is translating it in the sense of their caste identity. They just want to see their work in English. Now, then I have one more point to make about the young editors, again, of which Imayam talked about. Now, what the young editors do to the translation after a translation has gone through the collaborative exercise of the kind that Imayam talked about. Now, after this has been done comes the editor who, again, the power equations, all of these operate here. Now, I think there must be a similar meaningful collaboration, and I believe that this must happen between the editors and translators as well, if the ultimate product has to. No, he wasn't talking about the meaningful he was talking about between the writer and the translator, but between the editors and the translators also, because the editors are in a position to say yes or no, then this meaningful interaction, collaborative process of doing the translation does not sometimes happen. We have had to tell some of our editors that if this cannot happen, let us not publish this book.
Are your remarks over now?
Yes.
With someone else?
Thank you.
Please,
can you
Ms.
hear me?
Catherine Thangamma. And after that, our friend here, who's sitting near such a... I'm sorry I jumped queue, but yeah.
My comment is to Professor... Is it okay?
Switch on there. Switch on there.
It's on. Yeah. It's Dr. Professor Azhagarasan's differentiation that you made between Dalit and Harijan. It's a wonderful thing. Actually, I'm more comfortable standing, because Dalit, and Harijan, in fact, it was a kind of othering that Harijan means, And I recently, my last translation is Ayyangali, is Renukumar's biography of Ayyangali. In fact, when the temple entry movement was going on, Ayyangali refused to, join the movement. And he was a Puliya Dalit. And Mahatma Gandhi went to see him. And Ayyangali said, before the national movement, what we need is education for our children. We need opportunities for our children. And he stressed on education. In fact, he's the first person in India, before Gandhi, who started a non-violent struggle for the right of the Puliya for education. Yes. And in 1989-90, I think, when I was completing my I forget dates. When I was completing my MA, that was when Ayyangali's statue was brought. In fact, at that time, the state divisions had not been made, and the statue was built in Tamil Nadu and brought along the way to Trivandrum to be installed by Indira Gandhi in And in fact, that was a major mark, a milestone in the transformation of the Dalit system. And it is after that that even Ambedkar Jain centenary might even be an after effect. The second thing I wanted to say is that we spoke about identity trap and upper caste translating. It's not a question of, maybe, I don't know what with the present socio-political domain, what will happen, but if earlier, when we were in our 40s, 50s, if that India continued, in the next 2 generations, the Dalits will be ready to translate their own texts. But right now, I'll say I translated a Pulya text, Pulyatara, and it was impossible, and Mini, that way, again and again, my honor Mini as my editor, she was always there with me when I used to fight for, retaining that. It cannot be translated, that title. So that was retained. And in that text, Chirakurod is a Dalit Christian. And the text is most important because it exposes the hypocrisy of the church and the hierarchy that exists between the Syrian Christians. I'm a Syrian Christian. But when I translated the text, and I belong to Kuttanad, my family is one of the names mentioned in S. Harish's novel. So, one of the landlord kind of people. But when you begin to translate, you forget, if you are a good translator and if you want to do a good job, then you have to sacrifice your ego. That goes out of the picture. You are not you. You internalize the text. Like Deepa must have remembered, she listened to one of my workshops. It's like surrogate motherhood translation, because the text is not yours. The writer gets the fame. And if, as Professor Annamalai said, the translator gets the brickbats if it goes wrong. So, but we don't think of what the effect will be. This is an actual incident. My first translation, I began with N.S. Madhavan because he asked me to translate his short stories. Then Mini asked me to translate Kocheredi, that was a tribal writer. Then Pulayatara. And afterwards, this actually happened. A very famous Malayali, upper caste writer, she was given my name as a possible translator. After all, I won the crossword award. That was nothing. And she said, but she's a Dalit translator. And I was not given the text. She preferred to have somebody who did not sound or look or whatever Dalit. So that's what.
Mini told me what our writer Imayam sir explained about the translations and inadequacies in translations. If we take the translator, for example, Imayam sir work is translated by Justice Prabha Sreedharan. So she is a translator of very neutral nature. She has translated Uvesa essays of Uve Swaminathan Iyer and Miran stories and Imayam sir stories also. So, for example, one of his translation, that is, I am living now. I'm alive. I'm alive for now. That translation, one of the interaction, both Imayam sir and Madam interacted. At that time, I was there. So, sir has used the vocabulary of a 12 years old child. She was in the kidney transplantation. It is the stories about the kidney transplantation of the young boy. And the vocabulary used by the father and mother, Madam Sir has used the Tamil vocabulary relevantly. But a boy who is 12 years old doesn't know what is happening to him, what is going to happen to him. So he is using the normal words, very formal Tamil words that is exposed to a 12-year boy. So he was very carefully used in his Tamil writing. So Madam knows English very well as a justice. She knows than the normal translator. Her fluency in English and vocabulary was very high. She reduced herself to while writing about the dialects of that young boy, he used the vocabulary which is very, very basic. So that much effort she has taken. Even Imayam sir has appreciated the effort taken by the same effort. Madam also shared and Imayam sir also shared. So the effort taken by the translator always appreciated. Then there is a funny saying in English, if a translator is always will be critical, but if he is criticized by the author and editor and reader equally, then it is a good translation.
So, excuse me, just, have you finished, sir? Yeah. Please come here. We can take that mic, and we just want to hear. Oh, you have a mic, okay, all right. Yeah, no, that's fine, please.
I just wanted to ask Deepa about this, I mean, not for gossip really, but I know that at the Book Brahma festival, Banu had a different take on the creativity of a translator. She seemed to think that maybe too much credit was being given. And so, what do you, I mean, have you had that discussion? Has there been some sort of sangarsha over there? And in general, what do you think? Because all of this has led, I mean, the Booker is the reason for it. If it had remained a non-prize book, it wouldn't have got to this stage, right? So I just wanted to ask about that
No,
relationship.
I'm glad you brought that up, just for context. So during one of the sessions where Banu and I were in conversation with a couple of others, with my editor from Penguin and our agent, so I was saying, I was expressing these same opinions about how translation is as much a creative work of the translator and so on. So she was of the opinion that the translator should not be given any credit at all. Forget, little or more. And she said, I'm sure it was directed at me. She said, if I claimed it was my work as well, then that amounted to plagiarism, and that it was illegal, and then she could file a police complaint and all that. And so a few months after the Booker announcement was made, this collection of stories, like I said, it didn't exist in Kannada earlier. Heartlamp didn't exist. Heartlamp is the name of a short story collection she had, but those were a different set of stories. It was just the title story of that collection. So this selection, the 12 stories in Heartlamp, was selected from 6 of her short story collections. So that was brought out by her Kannada publisher, and she deemed it entirely unnecessary to mention that she was sharing this Booker Prize, the International Booker, with me as the translator. I mean, as to why she thinks translators don't deserve any credit at all is something that she needs. It's her opinion. I mean, I cannot say things in public. But also, the other thing is, so she mentioned that the copyright, and that is where she said one of her opinions was that the copyright itself is not the translators, which is not at all the case. When we signed the contract with Penguin, it very clearly specifies that the translation copyright is with the translator. So, and why she chose to ignore that as a lawyer herself is, again, not something I can talk about here. But yeah, no, I think this is important. And I was having this conversation about something else with another with a writer, and then we were of the opinion that, honestly, I think this is not about Banu Mushtaq, not about any particular writer, but I think writers who want to get their books translated into English or any other language also need to have a better understanding of what translation is. Everyone, I mean, this has been discussed enough everywhere. I think they all want to be in English because whether they like it or not, they know that they will get a far wider readership when they are translated into English. So there is that, and which is fair enough. Obviously, it's fair. It's not a judgment at all that they shouldn't. But at the same time, one is the trust factor, that they have to trust that the work is possibly in good hands. And secondly, I think there needs to be an understanding as to what the act of translation is. Because I know way too many writers who still think that this is just as good as AI. Like, how hard could translation be? And to have this conversation today, given how much discussion there is around the practice of translation, is beyond ridiculous. I understand if readers think that, but I simply cannot understand how writers who have been translated who want to be translated, and editors or reviewers or people connected to the literary field in some way or the other, if they themselves continue to think that translation is just such a easy clerical sort of a job, then don't get your books translated. I think it's as simple as that. Don't choose to be read in any other language other than the language that you're writing in. And if you do have the desire, if you do want to be read widely, then trust the process, trust the translator that you're working with. If that neither is not there, then fair enough, don't get translated. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, thank you. Professor Azhagarasan, briefly, I'm sorry that I could not entertain you because there were two in the queue before that.
Two
Yeah.
quick responses.
And after that,
see, during the tea break,
Yeah.
4 or 5 people asked me clarification about what exactly I mean by debating caste
Yeah.
and debating Dalit. Okay, debating caste is talking about oneself. Okay, so my Tamil readers, because I also used to write in Tamil, my Tamil readers know my family background, and I have written about my father, my brother, sister, how they remain casteist. My father had an intercaste marriage, but still he was very keen on cutting my mother's family. So I talk about our caste bias. Okay, that's what I mean by talking about caste. So talking about caste is talking about oneself. Talking about Dalit is talking about the other. That's a clarification.
Yeah.
And the responsibility of a non-Dalit translator is to expand the domain. See, for example, I see the change in the domain of literature towards history, towards non-fiction. Whether it is Amita Ghosh or even the regional fiction, there is so much of history getting in. Okay, I think Dalit literature and Dalit movements turned towards history has a huge role to play in the change that is happening in the larger domain.
Yeah.
I think these are things that we...
instead of just being subjective throughout, yeah.
Thank
you. Ms. Mini Krishnan is there saying
Exactly
the final
1 minute. This whole thing of taking credit away from the translator is atrocious.
Mike, close.
I said the idea of taking credit away from the translator is really atrocious. Just one example, there are lots of examples, but the most famous one I can share, and I think I've said it before also, 2007, In a Forest a Deer, Kartil Rahman, Ambai's Ring, which Lakshmi Holmstrom translated. Ambai's Kartil Rahman, which Lakshmi Holmstrom translated as In a Forest a Deer, which I published through OUP. I know, they shared the award. When the proofs came, I told Lakshmi, Holmstrom, not Ambai, I said, you can dedicate this. So she dedicated it to her husband or children or something. When the second lot of proofs came, Ambai was very annoyed and she said, how can she dedicate my book to her family? I said, Lux, the translation is Lakshmi Holmstrom's work. It belongs to her. The original is yours. She's only dedicating her translation. She's not dedicating your book. So I made a very, very clear distinction. And I'd also, my only claim to fame is that I was the first publisher to insist on equal credit for author and translator. Yes. I brought the translator. We paid equal advances in Macmillan to author and translator, 50 and divided the royalty. The name was on the cover, front cover. And in the catalog, I also put the picture of the translator. Only after that, the other publishers followed. Much, much later, even Penguin actually kept names off. Harper kept, even Geeta Krishnamurthy's name, I remember. That first proof, I remember it was kept out as late as 2010. But now, luckily, the translator is getting a bit of the sunlight. Thank you.
Professor Shyamala Narayan is going to speak now, right now. Yeah. You want to? Yeah.
I'll take just 1 minute.
Please.
See, I know this may not be the appropriate forum, but I'd like to congratulate the book review for keeping up, keeping up a literary publication for 50 years. I mean, that's nothing short of a miracle. And I'd like to share, and I would like to share one interesting analogy for the translator. They say that the unfortunate translator, he or she is like the accompanist in a Carnatic music.
Yeah, very right.
So they will get very little credit. Yeah. They cannot do their own thing. They have to keep following whatever the lead artist done.
Yeah.
So that is the fate of a translator. Thank you.
Yeah.
May I?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Deepa. I think that's a wonderful thing that you've been talking about. When Sreedhar and I received the Ladli Media Prize for translation, it was for translation, they said they didn't have the habit of inviting the translators. They only invited the author. And it was for translation. It was not even for the original book, in a certain sense, like the text that you're talking about. Yes, a lot of people think that translation is an easy activity. A lot of writers have told us, oh, why don't you do this for us? You can do it over a cup of tea, okay? It's a poem. You can do it over a cup of tea. Maybe if you have thought about, if you're a writer and you have thought about a poem for about ages together, it then comes out as a product over a cup of tea, but not translation. In this context, I would like to say a couple of things. If I'll take just 2 minutes. I know time is the essence, but I'm asking for 2 minutes. I'll be brief. When we have translated, we are upper caste, okay? Admit your caste, you said. Yes, Sreedhar and I are upper caste. We are upper class, but we have translated a whole lot of Dalit writers, and we have worked with them. There have been days when we have spent days and months together with them. We have tried to understand them. Yet, in spite of all of that, we may not have understood things completely. But there's an effort, there's an empathy. We as human beings have to do that, and that is what we try to do. So there may be a lacuna, but I don't think, for example, she has translated a Muslim author. Has anyone asked that question?
Yeah.
Has anyone asked that question here?
Right.
I don't have children. I've translated books where woman talks about the pain of having children. I have not gone through pregnancy. I have not gone through childbirth. But I have tried to learn, I've tried to understand, and I've tried to do that. So I think that there should be an attempt to understand cultures, to understand another human being, and I think that's the reason why we translate in a certain sense. And regarding your response to her thing that people pick up those lines, meaning I feel that we have a right to pick up those lines. When we are the aggrieved party, you know, if a woman says, Ame Godralu in Telugu, Godralu is a woman who can't have children. People may think it's not a slur, but if they say that to me, I would pick up on that word and say that hurts my sensibility, right? So she has a right to pick up those words. I think it's an onus on not just the writer, but the editor of OUP to have intervened at that point. I do not know who it was, what the text was, or whatever it was, to have intervened and said that's not the right thing. And there is an onus not only on the translator, but on the editor and the publishers also, to bring out the sensibility of a person. I want to end, this is the last sentence I'm going to say, and I take this from a poem that Maya Angelou says about the thing. I know why the caged bird sings. We translators are caged birds. We are caged in the text that somebody else has written. But we sing, we create, we put in our hearts, and we sing a song to celebrate the author and to celebrate ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Manju. That was very touching, really, the final shot. And I would just add a little to what Minnie said about the 2007 Crossword Awards. It was, at the time, it was expressly stated that the award is divided between the author and the publisher. And in my... no, sorry, the author and the translator. Publisher came out like that. So, author and the translator. And the translator, in the split case, the award was split between two translators and two authors. And she was relating the tale about what Ambai said. And Mukundan, whose Keshavan's Lamentations, which I translated, Mukundan was the most noble and gentle author that you can come across. But the problem is that in my case, the spoiled sport were the press people. I will say Madhrubhumi, they published a big picture of M. Mukundan and said M. Mukundan's Keshavanda Vilapangalku Crossword Award. And absolutely no mention of me, absolutely no mention that it is a translated text, only Keshavanda Vilapangal Crossword Award. And these other parts, which is equally distributed between the author and the translator, both have the rights. And in any case, the publisher is giving 50-50 royalty. So you are half copyright holder in a case, or you are the copyright holder of, like Mini said, of the translated text. It's your text. So this is the note on which I think we will close this. And we are already late. I'm not...
Not only are we late, we have to vacate because apparently there is another event here. So thank you so
thank
much,
you all. Thank you all.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much. And I thank both of you for inviting me here.
We got all the authors to the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and they were the ones who received the first copies of the translated work. So that's for the road.